Moonlit souls, welcome back to Wolf Heart Tales. Before we sink our claws into tonight's journey, howl at that like button and join our pack by subscribing, because this story of rejection, redemption, and an alpha king who refuses to let broken wolves fall, this one's going to shred your heart into pieces and rebuild it stronger. Tonight, we bring you 14 chapters of a mother's impossible love and the king who taught her she deserved to be saved. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Storm of Desperation. The rain didn't just fall, it attacked. Each drop hammered against the cracked window like accusations I couldn't escape, couldn't silence, couldn't afford to fix. The glass spiderwebbed in the corner where the frame had warped, letting in threads of cold air that no amount of towel stuffing could block. Beyond that fragile barrier, the city drowned in gray water and forgotten dreams. Inside, 5 reasons for breathing created their symphony of need. Eloan's cough ripped through the studio apartment first, wet, rattling, the sound of bronchitis blooming in 6-year-old lungs. 3 days of fever. 3 days of me counting the last drops of children's medicine like liquid gold. Gone yesterday. The pharmacy wanted $19 I didn't have. Mama. Her voice threaded through storm sounds, small and scorched. I'm cold. The words carved another piece from my already shredded heart. Behind me, Caspian and Linnea, for years old and mirror souls, had discovered that cardboard boxes could be torn into snow. Confetti drifted through lamplight while they worked in perfect unison, their small hands moving in patterns only they understood. The twins speak. Twin destruction. Twin hunger I'd tried to fill with creativity instead of food. Tobias clung to my leg like a barnacle with feelings, his thumb planted firmly in his mouth, brown eyes too old for 2 years. He never talked much. The pediatrician said he was just quiet. But I knew better. Children went silent when they carried burdens too heavy for words. And baby Aurelia, 8 months of light wrapped in worn blankets, wailed from her drawer crib. Not a crib at all. Just the bottom drawer of the dresser that came with the apartment, padded with every soft thing I owned. She was hungry again. Always hungry. The formula canister mocked me from the kitchen counter. Nearly empty. Payday wasn't until Friday. 3 eternities away in baby time. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass and counted. 72 hours. That's what the eviction notice gave me. Crimson letters screaming from cheap paper. Final notice. Pay $2,000 or vacate. $2,000 might as well have been $2 million. I'd called everyone. Distant relatives who stopped answering after the 3rd loan request. Old pack members from Moonvale who made it clear they wanted nothing to do with Stellan Cross's rejected Omega and her excessive breeding. That exact phrase had come from his new mate's perfect lips 6 months ago, delivered with a smile sharp enough to draw blood. I can't imagine having so many so close together, she'd purred, one manicured hand resting on her own swollen belly. Stellan and I are going to wait at least 3 years between children. Quality over quantity, you know. I'd abandoned my half-full cart in the grocery store aisle and walked out before the tears could fall where anyone could see. Rejection ceremonies weren't supposed to leave marks you could measure. But mine? Mine had been exactly 1 year ago tonight, and I could still feel the phantom burn. The moment Stellan stood before the entire Moonvale pack, his hand wrapped around his beta's delicate wrist instead of mine, and spoke words that severed our sacred bond. I, Stellan Cross, Alpha of Moonvale, reject you, Vesper Thorne, as my mate and Luna. The gasps from the crowd had been worse than the pain tearing through my chest. At least the pain was private. Humiliation echoed forever in pack memory. I'd been 3 months pregnant with the twins then. Already showing. Already exhausted from chasing toddler Eloan while carrying Caspian and Linnea inside me. He'd known. He'd chosen her anyway. Beautiful, powerful Daphne with her beta bloodline and political connections. She wasn't burdened with 3 children and counting. She wasn't weak Omega trash. She wasn't me, Mama. Eloan's small voice cracked. I'm really cold. I spun from the window, forcing my face into something resembling reassurance. Her pale blonde hair, a mirror of mine, plastered to her forehead with fever sweat. I'd wrapped her in every blanket we owned, but the heating in this building was theoretical at best. I know, sweetheart. Come here. I gathered her burning body into my arms, though my back screamed protest. I'd pulled something during the dinner rush last night, reaching for a fallen tray at the diner. Minimum wage. That's what feeding a family of 6 pays in the human world. Less than daycare for 5 children would cost if I could afford daycare, which I couldn't. So I worked nights when they slept, leaving Aloan, 6 years old and ancient-souled, in charge of watching her siblings. Made a child responsible for keeping babies alive because I had no other choice. What kind of mother does that? The desperate kind, my wolf whispered from the depths where she'd been silent for months. The twins stopped their cardboard destruction, wide eyes tracking their sister's fever-flushed face. Caspian crawled over on chubby knees, his small hand patting Aloan's leg. Feel better, Ellie. My heart cracked open the way it did 100 times daily, watching these children navigate a world that should have been kinder. They should have had a pack, a home, a father who wanted them. They had me, just me. One broken Omega whose wolf had gone nearly silent after the rejection, leaving me more human than shifter. No supernatural healing, no enhanced strength, just flesh and desperation held together by stubborn love. Aurelia's crying intensified into that particular pitch that meant her hunger had crossed from discomfort into pain. I settled Aloan back onto the couch bed we all shared and moved to pick up my youngest, swaying even as my vision swam with exhaustion. Hush, little light, I murmured against her downy hair. We'll figure it out. We always do. Lies. But children needed lies sometimes. They needed to believe their mother was capable, strong, in control. They couldn't know I fell asleep every night doing impossible mathematics, which bill to pay, which to ignore, whether food or heating mattered more, if I could skip meals so they could eat seconds. The knock came at exactly the wrong moment, which is to say, it came at all. Landlords didn't knock. They slipped notices under doors and sent threatening emails. Bill collectors had learned I didn't answer. I'd stopped having friends around the time I stopped having anything to offer besides sob stories and borrowed money I'd never repay. But this knock was different. Firm. Patient. Somehow commanding even in its restraint. My damaged wolf stirred, barely a flutter, but present. After months of silence, that hint of awareness felt like earthquake warnings. Tobias whimpered and pressed closer to my leg. The twins had gone statue-still, survival instincts sharper than 4-year-olds should need. Even Aloan sat up on the couch, fever-bright eyes wide and tracking. Stay here, I whispered, as if they could go anywhere else. I approached the door like one might approach a wild animal, slowly, carefully, ready to bolt. The peephole showed nothing but darkness. The hallway light had been out for 2 weeks. Another repair the landlord wouldn't make. Who is it? My voice came out steadier than I felt. The answer rumbled through the wood like distant thunder wrapped in midnight. Someone who wants to help. My wolf, dormant, damaged, nearly dead, suddenly surged with recognition. Not mate bond. That sacred connection had been ripped apart a year ago. But something else. Something primal that made Omega hindbrain sit up and pay attention despite rejection-induced numbness. Power. Real power. The kind that made lesser wolves submit before conscious thought. I don't need help. I lied through my teeth. Vesper Thorne, formerly of Moonvale Pack, mother of 5, 3 days from homelessness. Each word delivered, without judgment, just facts spoken by someone who could recite them all night if necessary. You need help. And I'm offering it. My hand was on the deadbolt before I'd consciously decided to open the door. Some part of me, the part still connected to instincts deeper than fear, recognized inevitability when it knocked. The man in my hallway was tall enough that I had to tilt my head back to see his face. Dark hair silvered at the temples. Eyes that gleamed amber, even in poor lighting, which meant wolf, which meant danger of a different kind entirely. He wore a long black coat that probably cost more than 6 months of my rent. Looked at me with intensity that made me want to simultaneously run and stand straighter. Who are you? I managed. His slight smile held no humor. My name is Kieran Ashford. I'm the Alpha King of the Northern Kingdom. The world tilted sideways. Everyone knew about the Alpha King. Legend made flesh. The wolf who'd united 17 fractious packs under one banner, brokered peace treaties with vampire covens and witch circles, was said to be able to kill a grown male with his bare hands, and had done so to protect his people. Power incarnate. Standing in my decrepit hallway, looking at me like I was a puzzle he intended to solve. That's not possible, I said stupidly. Many things that seem impossible are merely improbable. His gaze moved past me, taking in what he could see of the apartment. I watched his jaw tighten fractionally. May I come in? Every instinct screamed to say no. To slam the door in this powerful stranger's face and pretend he'd never existed. But Aurelia was still crying. Aloan's fever was getting worse. And the eviction notice wasn't going to disappear through force of will. Why? The question came out as a challenge. Why would the Alpha King care about a rejected Omega and her children? Something flickered in those amber eyes. Pain, maybe. Or recognition. Because I know what it's like to carry burdens alone, he said quietly. And because no child should suffer for the sins of cowardly fathers. The words landed like a punch to the sternum. Not because they were harsh, but because they were true. Because anyone had finally said it out loud. I stepped back, opened the door wider, and let the Alpha King into my falling apart life. Chapter 2. The King Arrives. Kieran Ashford entered my apartment the way apex predators enter unfamiliar territory, carefully, with controlled grace that spoke of power held in check. His presence seemed to fill every corner of the cramped space, making it simultaneously more crowded and somehow safer. The twins scrambled behind me, peeking around my legs with a mixture of fear and fascination. Tobias's grip on my thigh tightened until I felt his small fingers trembling. Aloan remained on the couch, watching with that fever-bright intensity that made her seem older than her 6 years. Kieran's gaze traveled over each child, his expression softening in ways I wouldn't have thought possible for someone called the Alpha King. Then he looked at me. Really looked. The kind of seeing that stripped away pretense and protective lies. When did you last eat? He asked. The question was so unexpected I almost laughed. I eat. That's not what I asked. Yesterday. Maybe the day before. Time blurred when you were in constant motion, constantly managing crises. Food felt optional when your children were fed. His eyes narrowed, reading the answer in my silence. Without another word, he pulled out his phone and typed something quickly. There will be food delivered within the hour. Hot, nutritious, enough for everyone. I can't accept. You can and you will. His tone left no room for argument, but there was something almost gentle in his certainty. Consider it the first small payment on a debt the pack world owes you. What debt? The bitterness leaked through despite my attempts to contain it. I was rejected, cast out. The pack world made its position on me very clear. Stellan Cross made a decision that violated every tenet of pack law and honor, Kieran said, his voice dropping into a register that made my wolf whimper with instinctive submission. He broke a sacred bond with a pregnant mate. He abandoned his children. He chose personal desire over responsibility. He paused, and when he spoke again, something raw replaced the Alpha King's authority. And you've been paying the price for his cowardice every day since. Tears burned behind my eyes. I refused to let them fall. I'd cried all my tears out months ago. Why are you here? I asked again. Really? The Alpha King doesn't just show up at random apartments to feed hungry children. Kieran was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. I've been tracking incidents of rejected mates for the past year, he finally said. Building cases. Documenting abuses. Your name came up in my research, and when I saw what you were facing. He shook his head. I couldn't look away. So this is charity. The word tasted like ash. No. His eyes locked with mine, and the intensity there stole my breath. This is justice. And if you'll let me, it's also a beginning. A beginning of what? The knock on the door interrupted whatever he might have said. The food had arrived impossibly fast, bags and bags of takeout from a restaurant I'd walked past 1,000 times, but never entered. Kieran accepted them from the delivery person with a murmured thanks and a tip I didn't see, but judged generous by the young man's stunned expression. And then this stranger, this Alpha King, began unpacking containers of pasta and bread and salad onto my rickety table, moving with the confidence of someone accustomed to being obeyed, but the care of someone who'd known hunger himself. The children crept closer, drawn by smells that promised warmth and fullness. "Eat," Kieran said simply, pulling out the 2 mismatched chairs I owned. "All of you. Then we'll talk about what comes next." I wanted to argue. I wanted to maintain some shred of pride. But Alohan's fever was burning, and the twins were already reaching for bread with desperate little hands, and Tobias had released my leg in favor of investigating a container of macaroni and cheese. Aurelia had settled after I'd managed to get half a bottle of formula into her, the last of it. So I sat, and I fed my children. And I tried not to think about what debt I might be incurring by accepting help from the most powerful wolf in the Northern Kingdom. I tried and failed, because I could feel him watching me even as I portioned out food, his gaze heavy with something I couldn't name. No pity. Not exactly kindness either. Something more complex. More dangerous. Something that felt almost like recognition. The children ate like they'd never seen food before, which wasn't far from the truth. At least not food like this, hot and plentiful and rich with flavors that made even my exhausted appetite stir. I picked at a piece of bread, my stomach too tight with anxiety to accept much more, but I made sure each of them had seconds. Alohan's cheeks flushed with more than fever now. Even baby Aurelia had calmed completely, her small body relaxed in my arms as warmth and fullness worked their magic. Kieran had positioned himself near the window, giving us space but never quite taking his attention away. He'd removed his expensive coat, revealing a dark sweater that did nothing to diminish his commanding presence. If anything, the casual attire made him more intimidating. Power didn't need decoration. "The twins," he said quietly once the initial feeding frenzy had calmed. "Caspian and Linnea. They're remarkably in sync." I glanced at them, currently working together to build a tower from empty takeout containers, moving in perfect harmony. "Twin bond," I explained. "They've always been like that. Sometimes I think they have their own language." And Tobias. My youngest boy had fallen asleep against my side, his small body finally relaxed after days of tension. He doesn't talk much. The pediatrician says he's just quiet, but I trailed off, unsure why I was sharing this with a stranger. "But you worry." Kieran's voice held understanding. Silence in children usually means they're carrying things they shouldn't have to carry. The accuracy of it stole my breath. "Yes." He moved closer, crouching down so he was eye level with Alohan, who'd been watching him with the solemn intensity of a child who'd learned too young to assess threats. "What's your name, little one?" She looked at me for permission. I nodded. "Alohan," she said, her voice hoarse from coughing. "I'm 6. I help Mama with the babies." Something passed across Kieran's face. Pain. Maybe anger. Definitely sorrow. "That's very brave of you. But you know what? 6-year-olds should get to be children, not helpers. That's what adults are for." "Mama needs help," Alohan said simply, as if this explained everything. Which perhaps it did. Kieran straightened, and when he looked at me, his eyes held a weight of understanding that made my throat tight. "How long has she been running a fever?" 3 days. "It's just a cold. Just a cold that you can't afford to treat properly." It wasn't a question.
He pulled out his phone again.
"I'm sending a doctor."
"No."
I stood, jostling Tobias, who whimpered in his sleep. "I can't pay for a doctor. I can barely pay for—" I gestured helplessly at the eviction notice. "You're not paying for anything." Kieran's voice carried that tone again, the one that suggested arguing would be pointless. "The doctor is packed. He'll be here within the hour. And he'll bring everything Alohan needs." "Why are you doing this?" The question came out more desperate than I intended. "You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Don't I? He stepped closer, and I caught his scent, pine and winter air, and something darker, more complex. It made my dormant wolf stir again, confused and curious. Vesper, do you know what happens when an alpha rejects his pregnant mate? I flinched at the clinical way he said it. I live it every day. The bond severance causes permanent damage to the Omega's wolf, he continued, relentlessly. It's why you can barely shift now. Why is your healing compromised? Why you're more human than wolf? Stellan Cross didn't just reject you. He crippled you. And he did it knowing you were carrying his children, knowing you'd be vulnerable and alone. My hands were shaking. I set Tobias carefully on the couch next to Lowen and wrapped my arms around myself. I know all this. Knowing doesn't change anything. It does if someone finally holds him accountable. I laughed, and it came out bitter. Accountable? He's Alpha of Moonvale. He has Daphne now. Probably has children with her. He won. That's the end of the story. No, Kieran said softly. That's where you're wrong. The story doesn't end with his victory. He moved close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. It ends with yours. Before I could process that statement, another knock sounded at the door. The doctor, apparently, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a medical bag that looked like it cost more than my car. He introduced himself as Dr. Malachi Winters, and within minutes he was examining Aloan with a gentleness that made her giggle despite her fever. I stood back and watched this stranger care for my daughter the way she deserved to be cared for. He prescribed antibiotics, which he produced from his bag along with children's fever reducer, throat lozenges, and a humidifier that he set up without being asked. Bronchitis, he said once Aloan was settled with medication and a lollipop. Caught early enough that it shouldn't develop into anything serious, but she needs rest, warmth, and consistent medication for the next 10 days. He looked at me, then at the apartment, and I saw him calculating the same impossible equations I ran every night. I'll check in tomorrow to see how she's progressing. I can't, I started. You don't need to. Dr. Winters interrupted gently. This is part of my duties as Northern Kingdom pack physician. After he left with promises to return and instructions I tried desperately to memorize, silence fell over the apartment. The twins had crashed, sprawled across each other in that boneless way children have. Tobias was still sleeping. Aurelia was finally quiet in her drawer crib, her small chest rising and falling steadily. Only Aloan remained awake, watching Kieran and me with eyes too knowing for 6 years old. You should rest too, sweetheart, I told her, smoothing her pale blonde hair back from her forehead. Already the fever was breaking thanks to the medication. Is he going to be our new daddy? She asked, loud enough for Kieran to hear. I felt my face flame. Aloan, no, that's not. I don't have a daddy, she continued matter-of-factly. None of us do. Caspian says daddies are supposed to keep you safe, but ours didn't want to. The pain in my chest was physical. Aloan, your old daddy made a mistake, Kieran said quietly, moving to crouch beside the couch again. A big one. But that doesn't mean you don't deserve a family. All of you deserve a pack. Safety. People who will protect you. He looked up at me, and something in his expression made my heart skip. Your mother has been carrying all of you alone for too long. That's going to change. How? I asked, because I needed to understand what was happening, what he wanted, what price this generosity would ultimately exact. Kieran stood, and suddenly the small apartment felt even smaller with his presence filling it. Come with me. You and all 5 children. Back to the Northern Kingdom. I actually laughed. Just like that? Pack up and move across 3 states to live with wolves I don't know, in a pack I have no connection to. You'd have a connection to me. His eyes held mine. I'm offering you sanctuary, Vesper. A house. Resources. Safety. Jobs for when you're ready. Schools for the children. Medical care. Everything you've been struggling to provide alone. Why? The question seemed to be the only one I could ask. Why would you do this for us? Kieran was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight of old pain. 10 years ago, my sister was rejected by her mate. She was pregnant.
Alone. Scared.
She tried to make it work in the human world, just like you. He paused, and I watched his hands clench. She died in childbirth because she couldn't afford proper medical care. The baby, my nephew, died with her. Oh, goddess. I'm sorry. I was building the Northern Kingdom then. Trying to unite packs. Playing politics. I knew she was struggling, but I thought I had time to help her. His amber eyes met mine, full of ghosts. I didn't. I won't make that mistake again. When I found your case, read about what you were surviving, I saw her. I saw every rejected Omega who's been abandoned by cowards who call themselves alphas. So this is about your sister, I said slowly. I'm a proxy for your guilt.
No.
He stepped closer, and the intensity of his presence made me catch my breath. This is about doing what's right. Yes, my sister's death drives me. But you're not a proxy, Vesper. You're a mother of 5 who's been dealt an impossible hand and somehow kept playing anyway. You're strong in ways most wolves will never understand. He gestured at the apartment, at the eviction notice, at the evidence of my constant barely surviving. And you deserve better than this. I wanted to say no. I wanted to cling to my independence, my pride, my right to suffer alone if I chose to. But then I looked at Aloan, already breathing easier thanks to medicine I couldn't have afforded. I looked at the twins sleeping peacefully with full bellies. Looked at Tobias and Aurelia, so small and vulnerable and depending entirely on me to keep them alive. What was pride worth against their safety? If I agree, I said carefully, what would you expect in return? Kieran's expression softened slightly. Nothing you're not willing to give. You'd be part of the pack, under my protection. The children would be raised as pack members with all the benefits that entails. You'd have your own space, a real home, not an apartment. And when you're ready, if you want to work, there are positions available. He held my gaze steadily. But there's no debt, Vesper. No obligation beyond being part of the community. People don't just give things away for free, I said. Especially not powerful people. You're right. So let me be clear about what I'm asking. His voice was firm but not unkind. I'm asking you to let someone help you. I'm asking you to accept that you don't have to do this alone anymore. I'm asking you to trust that not every wolf is like Stellan Cross.
Trust.
The word was almost funny. Trust was what I'd given Stellan, and look where that had gotten me. But this wasn't about me anymore. It hadn't been about me since the moment I'd felt the first flutter of life in my belly and realized I was carrying something more important than my own broken heart. I need to think about it, I said finally. Kieran nodded as if he'd expected this. Of course. But Vesper, you have 72 hours before eviction, and winter is coming. I need you to think quickly. He moved toward the door, collecting his coat. Kieran, I called as he reached for the doorknob. He turned back. Thank you. For tonight. For Aloan. For seeing us. His expression was unreadable. I see you, Vesper Thorne. All of you. Every struggle. Every sacrifice. Every moment of strength you think no one notices.
He paused.
And I'm telling you that you don't have to be invisible anymore. The door closed behind him with a soft click. And I stood in the sudden silence of my apartment, warmer now, fuller, smelling of food instead of mildew, and tried to understand what had just happened. I like him, Mama. Aloan's voice drifted up from the couch. He has kind eyes. You should be sleeping, I said automatically. Are we going to go with him? To the Northern Kingdom? I looked around the apartment that had been my prison and my haven, the place where I'd simultaneously failed and succeeded every single day. Looked at my 5 children, these impossible gifts that had cost me everything and given me purpose. I don't know, baby. Maybe. I think we should, Aloan said, yawning. I'm tired of being cold and scared. Out of the mouths of children, I settled onto the couch beside her, gathering her warm little body close. The twins shifted in their sleep. Tobias's breathing was a soft counterpoint to Aurelia's occasional baby snuffles. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. Through the cracked window, I could see stars beginning to emerge from behind the clouds. Maybe, I thought, maybe there was such a thing as second chances. Maybe the Alpha King who'd appeared in my doorway wasn't salvation or danger, but simply possibility. And maybe, just maybe, I was brave enough to find out. Chapter 3. Dawn of Decision. Morning came with weak sunlight filtering through the cracked window and Aloan's small hand shaking my shoulder. "Mama, there's people outside." I jolted awake, my heart immediately racing into panic mode. People outside could mean landlords, could mean trouble, could mean... I stumbled to the window and looked down at the street below. 2 large black SUVs were parked at the curb, and standing beside them were 4 individuals who radiated the kind of casual authority that screamed pack wolves. They weren't threatening, just waiting. Patience as statues in the early morning light. My phone buzzed on the makeshift nightstand. An unknown number, but I answered anyway because at this point, what did I have to lose? "Good morning, Vesper." Kieran's voice was warm despite the early hour. "I hope I didn't wake you." The security detail outside my building did that, I said, trying to keep my voice level. "They're not security." "Well, not just security." I could hear the slight amusement in his tone. "I thought you might appreciate helping me move, should you decide to accept my offer." "I haven't decided yet." "I know. But the 72 hours are ticking, and I'm a firm believer in being prepared." He paused. "There's no pressure, Vesper. If you want them to leave, they'll leave. But if you want to come see what I'm offering before you make a final decision, they can drive you to the Northern Kingdom. Just for a visit. You can come back if you don't like what you see." It was manipulative in a way, offering me a glimpse of something better, knowing that once I saw it, leaving would be harder. But it was also pragmatic. How could I make a decision about uprooting my entire life without seeing where we'd be going? "The children," I started, "are welcome, obviously. The drive is about 4 hours. I've arranged for car seats, snacks, everything you'll need. Dr. Winters will accompany you to monitor Aloan's recovery." He'd thought of everything, which meant he'd been planning this since last night. Probably longer. The realization should have irritated me. Instead, I felt something else, a strange lightness, the burden of constant decision-making temporarily lifted by someone else's confidence. What if the landlord comes while I'm gone? He won't. "I've already paid your rent through the end of the month." Before I could protest, he continued, "Consider it insurance. If you decide not to come to the Northern Kingdom, you'll still have time to make other arrangements without the immediate threat of homelessness." My throat tightened. "You can't just..." "I can. And I have. Vesper, please." His voice softened. "Let me do this. Let someone help you for once." The twins were awake now, peering at me with curious eyes. Tobias had his thumb in his mouth. Aurelia was starting to fuss in her drawer. This was my life. Constant motion, constant needs, constant juggling of impossible demands. What would it be like to have help? Real help. Not just charity that came with judgment and shame. "Okay," I heard myself say. "We'll come see it. Just to see. That's all I'm asking." The relief in his voice was palpable. "The team will help you pack whatever you need for a few days.
Take your time."
There's no rush." After we hung up, I stood in the center of my apartment and looked at the accumulated debris of our lives. What did you pack when you didn't know if you were coming back? What did you leave behind? The knock on the door was gentle this time. When I opened it, a woman stood there with a warm smile and eyes that held understanding rather than pity. She was tall, athletic, with short auburn hair and the confident bearing of someone used to handling difficult situations. "Hi, I'm Talia Storm, one of the Northern Kingdom coordinators," she said. "Kieran sent me to help with whatever you need. And before you say you don't need help, I've already heard that line about 1,000 times. So, let's just skip to the part where you let me assist anyway." Despite everything, I smiled. "That direct, huh? Life's too short for dancing around things." She glanced past me at the children. 5 little ones. "You've got your hands full." That's one way to put it. Talia entered with the ease of someone who knew how to be helpful without being intrusive. Within minutes, she'd corralled the twins into a game that involved packing their clothes into bags, made silly faces at Aurelia that stopped her crying, and somehow convinced Tobias to actually show her which toys he wanted to bring. "You're good at this," I observed, folding Aloan's clothes into a duffel bag. I have 3 of my own, Talia said, helping Linnea choose between 2 stuffed animals. Teenagers now. Thank the goddess. But I remember the little years. The chaos. The constant motion. The feeling like you're drowning and everyone else is just watching from the shore. The accuracy of it made me pause. You were alone for a while. My mate died when the youngest was 2. She said it matter-of-factly, but I caught the old grief underneath. The Northern Kingdom took us in. Kieran personally made sure we had everything we needed. That's what he does. He finds the ones who are struggling and gives them a chance to breathe.
Why? I asked.
I know about his sister, but there has to be more to it. Talia was quiet for a moment, considering. Kieran believes that a pack is only as strong as its most vulnerable members. He's not interested in ruling through fear or maintaining power through hierarchy. He wants to build something different, a community where being Omega doesn't mean being disposable, where rejection doesn't equal a death sentence. She looked at me directly. I know you're scared. I know trusting another alpha, especially after what you've been through, feels impossible. But Vesper, I'm telling you as someone who's lived it, giving Kieran a chance was the best decision I ever made for my family. Aloan had been listening from the couch, her fever-bright eyes tracking the conversation. Will there be other kids there? She asked Talia. Dozens, Talia assured her. The kingdom has a school, playgrounds, even a library just for children. You'd have friends, Aloan. Real friends who understand what it means to be packed. I watched my daughter's face transform with hope, and something in my chest cracked open. How long had it been since any of my children had looked hopeful about the future? The packing took less time than I expected, mainly because we didn't have much worth packing. Clothes, a few toys, the essentials. My entire life fits into 3 duffel bags and a diaper bag. It should have been depressing. Instead, it felt almost liberating. Less to carry. Less to lose. Dr. Winters arrived just as we were finishing, checking Aloan's temperature and listening to her lungs with professional thoroughness. Much better, he pronounced. The antibiotics are working. She'll be fine for the drive, but she should rest as much as possible. The SUVs were spacious and clean, smelling of leather and something else, safety maybe. The car seats were indeed installed, top-of-the-line models that probably cost more than I made in a month. Talia rode with us, keeping up a gentle stream of conversation that required minimal response, pointing out landmarks as we left the city behind. The twins fell asleep within 30 minutes, lulled by the smooth motion. Tobias stayed pressed against my side, his small hand clutching my shirt. Aurelia nursed and dozed. And Aloan stared out the window with wide eyes, watching the urban landscape give way to forests and hills. It's pretty, she whispered. Yes, baby. It is. The Northern Kingdom revealed itself gradually. First came the outer markers, subtle signposts that probably meant nothing to humans, but everything to wolves. Ancient symbols carved into trees. Stones placed in deliberate patterns. Then the land itself changed, becoming wilder, more pristine. The trees grew thicker, taller, their branches creating a canopy that filtered the sunlight into golden streams. We passed through a gate that looked deceptively simple, but hummed with magical wards I could feel even through my damaged wolf senses. Guards nodded at our vehicle, their expressions friendly rather than suspicious. And then we crested a hill, and I saw it. The Northern Kingdom wasn't just a pack. It was a town, a real town with houses and shops and a central square that looked like something from a postcard. Children played in a park while adults watched from benches, talking and laughing. Teenagers kicked a soccer ball around a field. An elderly couple walked hand in hand down a tree-lined street. It looked normal.
Happy.
Safe. Welcome home, Talia said softly. This isn't my home, I protested automatically. Not yet. But it could be. We drove through the main area and up another hill where houses became more spaced out, larger, surrounded by forest. The SUV stopped in front of a building that made my breath catch. Not a mansion, but close. 2 stories. Wraparound porch. Windows that gleamed in the afternoon sun. A yard with actual grass, real trees, a swing set that looked brand new. "This is where you'd live," Talia said, reading my shocked expression. "Kieran wanted you to have space for the children, somewhere they could play safely." "This is too much," I managed. "This is what every pack member deserves. Come on, let's look inside." The interior was even more overwhelming. An actual living room with furniture that matched. A kitchen with appliances that all worked. 4 bedrooms upstairs, each one larger than my entire studio apartment had been. Bathrooms with hot water and water pressure. A basement that had been converted into a playroom, complete with toys and books and soft mats for crawling babies. Eloan ran from room to room, her earlier fever forgotten in the excitement. The twins toddled after her, squealing with delight. Even Tobias let go of my leg to explore, his eyes wide with wonder. "There's a backyard too," Talia said, leading me to the kitchen windows. "Fenced in. Safe. The neighbors have children around the same ages as yours. The school is a 10-minute walk down the road. There's a clinic where Dr. Winters works about 5 minutes in the other direction." I couldn't speak. Couldn't process this level of consideration, planning, care. Why? The question came out as a whisper. Why would Kieran give this to us? Talia's expression softened. "Because he can. Because you need it. Because in the Northern Kingdom, we take care of our own."
She paused.
"And between you and me, I think you remind him of his sister. Not in a replacement way, but in a I can save this one way. He carries a lot of guilt about not being there for her when she needed him most. Helping you helps him heal too. So, I am a proxy."
"No."
"You're a person who deserves help, and he's someone with the means to provide it. The fact that it also helps him doesn't diminish what it means for you." Before I could respond, a familiar presence made my wolf stir. I turned to find Kieran standing in the kitchen doorway, watching me with those intense amber eyes. "What do you think?" he asked quietly. I looked around at the house that was too perfect, too generous, too everything. I looked at my children exploring rooms that could be theirs, playing with toys they wouldn't have to share, running through space that was safe and warm. Looked at the view of forest and safety through windows that locked properly and kept the cold out. "I think," I said slowly, "that you're either the most generous person I've ever met, or this is the most elaborate trap in history." His mouth quirked. "Can it be both?" "That's not reassuring. I'm not trying to trap you, Vesper. I'm trying to give you options." He moved closer, and I caught that scent again, pine and winter, and something that made my broken wolf whimper with confused longing. "Stay for a week. Meet the pack. See how the children adjust. Let yourself rest for the first time in Goddess knows how long. Then decide. If you want to leave, I'll have you driven back with enough money to start fresh, wherever you want. No obligations. No strings." Why do I feel like there's a but coming? Because you're smart enough to know that nothing is ever truly simple. His eyes held mine. "The but is that once you're here, once you're part of this pack, I protect what's mine. And that means if Stellan Cross ever tries to come near you or these children again, he'll have to go through me first." The possession in those words should have frightened me. Instead, I felt something else entirely. A dangerous flutter of what might have been hope. "What if I don't want to be protected?" I asked. "What if I want to stand on my own?" "Then I'll teach you how to fight," Kieran said simply. "I'll train you, help you rebuild your wolf connection, give you every tool you need to defend yourself and your children." But Vesper, wanting to be strong and refusing help aren't the same thing. Let yourself be both. Eloan appeared in the doorway, her small hand slipping into Kieran's much larger one with the easy trust of children who hadn't yet learned to fear. "Mr. Kieran, there's a room upstairs with 5 beds.
5.
Can that be our room?" He looked down at her, and his expression transformed into something so gentle it made my chest ache. "That room is yours if your mother says yes." Eloan turned those fever-bright, hopeful eyes on me. "Please, Mama? Please, can we stay? Just for a little while." Behind her, the twins were peeking around the corner. Tobias had actually ventured close enough to grab my leg again. Aurelia gurgled from where Talia held her, content and safe and warm. My 5 children. My 5 impossible, beautiful reasons for surviving. Just for a week. I heard myself say, we'll stay for a week, and then I'll decide. The smile that crossed Kieran's face was like sunrise. That's all I ask. And as my children cheered and ran to explore their new room, as Talia squeezed my shoulder with understanding, as Kieran watched me with eyes that promised protection, I wasn't sure I could trust yet. I let myself believe, just for a moment, that maybe we'd finally found somewhere safe to land. Chapter 4. Shadows from the Past. The first 3 days in the Northern Kingdom passed in a blur of overwhelming adjustment and unexpected comfort. Aloan's fever broke completely by the second morning, and watching her run around the backyard with actual energy, actual joy, made something in my chest both break and heal simultaneously. The pack members I met were different from anything I'd known in Moonvale. Not the careful politeness I'd encountered there, where everyone knew I was Omega and treated me accordingly, either with condescension or pity that felt like acid on skin. Here, people introduced themselves with genuine warmth. Talia's 3 teenagers stopped by with welcome baskets filled with homemade goods and children's books. A woman named Bronte, who ran the pack's daycare, offered to watch the twins and to buy us for a few hours so I could rest. Actually rest. Not just collapse between crises. I don't mind, I tried to explain. I'm their mother. I should. That's nonsense, Bronte interrupted firmly. Mothers are human. Well, Wolf. You know what I mean. Everyone needs help, and there's no shame in accepting it. So I let her take Caspian, Linnea, and Tobias to the daycare, where they were immediately absorbed into a group of playing children. Wooden blocks and finger paints, and the sound of laughter that didn't carry undertones of hunger or fear. I kept Aloan and Aurelia with me, not quite ready to let all of them go at once. The house still felt surreal. I kept waiting for someone to tell me there had been a mistake, that this wasn't really for us, that we needed to leave. But the days passed, and no one came. Instead, people kept arriving with gifts, hand-me-down clothes that were barely worn, toys the children loved, casseroles and baked goods that meant I didn't have to cook. This is what Pack does, Talia explained on the 3rd afternoon, sitting with me on the front porch while the children napped inside. We take care of each other. No one keeps score. Someone always keeps score, I said, because that had been my experience. Not here. She studied me carefully. You're waiting for the other shoe to drop, aren't you? It wasn't a question. I was for the first 6 months, Talia continued. Kept thinking someone would realize we didn't belong, that we weren't good enough, that the generosity would run out. She smiled slightly. It never did. Eventually I stopped waiting and started living. I wanted to ask more, but movement down the road caught my attention. Kieran was walking toward the house, and he wasn't alone. 3 men accompanied him, all of them radiating the kind of power that marked them as high-ranking wolves. My instincts immediately went on alert, that old Omega programming telling me to be small, be quiet, be invisible. Easy, Talia murmured. Those are Kieran's inner circle. His beta, Malachi, the tall one with the scar. His head of security, Vance, the built one who looks like he could bench press a car. And his advisor, Gareth, the older gentleman with a silver beard. Why are they here? Probably to meet you properly. Kieran likes his people to know who they're protecting. Protecting. As if I was already decided, already staying, already part of this pack. The 4 men stopped at the porch steps, and I forced myself to stand, to meet their eyes even though everything in me wanted to submit and look away. Aloan had woken from her nap and now pressed against my leg, watching the strangers with cautious curiosity. Vesper, Kieran said, his voice carrying that tone of gentle command. I wanted to introduce you to my council. If you're going to be part of the kingdom, you should know the people who help run it. If not when. The distinction mattered. Malachi stepped forward first, his scarred face softening as he looked at Aloan. Ma'am, it's good to meet you. Your daughter has your eyes. The observation was so unexpected, so kind, that I blinked. Thank you. Vance nodded respectfully, his massive frame somehow non-threatening. We've heard a lot about you and your children. Welcome to the Northern Kingdom. Gareth, the older advisor, studied me with eyes that seemed to see everything. You've survived an ordeal that would have broken most wolves. That takes remarkable strength. I didn't have a choice, I said automatically. There's always a choice. His voice was gentle but firm. You chose to keep fighting for your children rather than giving up. That matters. He glanced at Kieran. She'll fit in well here, if she decides to stay. The decision is entirely hers, Kieran said, his eyes meeting mine. No pressure. No obligations. Except there were obligations, weren't there? 3 days of shelter, food, medical care, safety. 3 days of my children being happy and healthy and hopeful. Those things created debt, whether anyone admitted it or not. Can I speak with you? I asked Kieran. Alone. He nodded immediately. Malachi, would you mind staying with Eloan for a few minutes? I promise we won't be long. To my surprise, Eloan released my leg and walked over to Malachi, who crouched down to her level with the ease of someone comfortable around children. Want to see something cool? He asked her. I can whistle really loud. Loud enough to call birds. Her eyes went wide. Really? Really? Come on, I'll show you. I let Kieran lead me into the house and toward what appeared to be a small office. Mahogany desk, leather chairs, bookshelves filled with actual books. It was elegant and comfortable and completely at odds with every space I'd occupied for the past year. What's wrong? Kieran asked once the door was closed. Nothing's wrong. That's the problem. I wrapped my arms around myself. This is all too perfect. The house, the pack, everyone being so kind. It doesn't feel real. It is real, Vesper. But for how long? What happens when I can't keep up the gratitude? When my children misbehave? When I mess something up? What happens when you all realize I'm not worth this much effort? The words came out more raw than I'd intended, exposing the fear I'd been carrying since Stellan's rejection, that I was fundamentally unworthy, that any kindness extended to me was temporary, that eventually everyone would see what he'd seen and decide I wasn't enough. Kieran was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. Come here. What? Please. Just come here. I approached cautiously, stopping when I was close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away. And when I didn't, he placed his hands on my shoulders, gentle, grounding, warm. Look at me, he said. I forced my eyes up to meet his amber gaze. You are not a burden, he said, each word delivered with absolute conviction. You are not an obligation. You are not someone we're tolerating until we find an excuse to cast you out. You are a mother who has survived impossible circumstances while protecting 5 children. You are strong, resilient, and worthy of every bit of help you've received and more. You don't know me, I whispered. I know enough. I know you've been hungry so your children could eat. I know you've worked yourself sick to keep a roof over their heads. I know you've faced rejection and humiliation and kept going anyway. His hands tightened slightly on my shoulders. I know that Stellan Cross is a fool who threw away something precious because he was too weak to appreciate what he had. The tears I'd been holding back for days finally spilled over. I tried to turn away, but Kieran pulled me forward into an embrace that was entirely unexpected and completely overwhelming. His arms wrapped around me, strong and steady, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I let myself lean on someone else. It's okay, he murmured against my hair. You're allowed to fall apart sometimes. That's what a pack is for, to hold you up when you can't stand on your own. I cried into his chest, great shaking sobs that released months of fear and exhaustion and desperate hope. He didn't try to shush me or tell me it would all be fine. He just held me, one hand rubbing slow circles on my back, steady as a heartbeat. When the tears finally subsided, I pulled back, mortified. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Don't apologize. He produced a handkerchief from somewhere, handing it to me. You're entitled to your emotions. I wiped my face, trying to compose myself. This doesn't mean I'm staying. I know. I still need to decide what's best for my children. I know that too. And I can't I'm not ready to. I gestured vaguely between us, trying to articulate the strange pull I felt toward him, the way my damaged wolf perked up in his presence, the dangerous warmth his proximity created. Understanding flickered in his eyes. I'm not asking for anything like that. The mate bond, the attraction, those are complicated things we don't need to address right now. I'm offering you sanctuary, Vesper. That's all. Everything else can wait until you're ready. If you're ever ready.
Why?
The question I kept asking because I couldn't understand his motives. Why do you care so much? Kieran was silent for a moment, his gaze distant. My sister's name was Celine. She was bright and kind and had this laugh that could make everyone around her smile. When her mate rejected her, she was 5 months pregnant and terrified. She called me, told me she was struggling, and I promised I'd help her. His voice roughened. I was in the middle of kingdom negotiations. There were 3 packs on the verge of war, and I told myself that if I could just finish the peace talks, I'd go to her. It would only take another week. He paused, pain etched into every line of his face. She died 6 days later. The baby was breech, and she couldn't afford a hospital that had the right equipment. She bled out in a free clinic while I was signing papers 3 states away. Kieran, I carry her death with me every single day. His eyes met mine, and they were full of a grief that had never quite healed. And when I see mothers like you, struggling alone because some alpha decided his comfort was more important than his responsibility, I see her. I see every Celine who didn't make it. I'm not going to die, I said softly.
No.
You're not. Because I'm not going to let that happen. The fierceness in his voice made my wolf whimper, with confused recognition. So, yes, Vesper, this is about my sister.
But it's also about you.
About your children. About building a world where rejection doesn't equal a death sentence. He held my gaze steadily. Stay or go, that's your choice. But know that if you stay, you'll have a pack that actually honors what that word means. A knock on the door interrupted whatever I might have said. Malachi's voice came through, carefully neutral. Alpha, sorry to interrupt, but there's a situation you need to address. Kieran's expression shifted immediately into something harder, more controlled. What kind of situation? Visitors at the southern border. From Moonvale Pack. My blood went cold. Stellan, I breathed. We don't know that, Kieran said, but his hand had moved to the doorknob, his entire posture alert. Stay here with the children. Malachi, Vance, and Gareth will remain at the house. I'll handle this. If it's him, I started. If it's him, he's not getting anywhere near you or your children. That's a promise. Kieran's eyes held mine for a moment longer, conveying a depth of protective ferocity that made my breath catch. Then he was gone, moving with predatory grace toward whatever threat had appeared at the border. I returned to the porch to find Aloan sitting on Malachi's lap, giggling as he made bird calls that actually seemed to attract a few curious sparrows. The twins and Tobias were back from daycare, playing with toy cars on the porch steps while Vance watched with amused attention. Gareth stood slightly apart, his phone in hand, receiving updates. Is everything okay? Talia asked, appearing from around the side of the house with Aurelia on her hip. I don't know, I admitted. Someone from Moonvale is here. Her expression tightened. Kieran will handle it. But what if he couldn't? What if Stellan had come with his pack, demanding his children back, using pack law and alpha authority to take them from me? What if this entire sanctuary had been temporary, and now reality was crashing back in? What if I'd let myself hope, and that hope was about to be crushed? Aloan looked up at me, reading my fear with that uncanny perception children develop when they've had to monitor their parents' moods for survival. Mama, are we leaving? No, baby. I tried to make my voice steady. We're not going anywhere. Even as I said it, I prayed it was true. The wait was excruciating. Malachi kept the children distracted with stories and games, his casual confidence somehow soothing despite the tension crackling through the air. Vance positioned himself where he could see the road leading to the house, his posture deceptively relaxed but his eyes constantly scanning. Gareth made quiet phone calls, coordinating something I couldn't quite hear. And I stood on the porch, holding Aurelia against my chest like a shield, and tried not to fall apart. An hour passed, then another. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that seemed obscenely beautiful given the fear churning in my stomach. When Kieran's SUV finally appeared on the road, I felt my wolf stir with an intensity that shocked me. Not fear, recognition. As if some part of me that had been dormant was waking up and identifying him as something. Not mate, because my bond with Stellan was severed and broken, but something else. Something that felt like safety wrapped in strength. He stepped out of the vehicle alone, his expression unreadable in the fading light. I handed Aurelia to Talia and moved down the porch steps before I'd consciously decided to do so, meeting him halfway up the walk. What happened? I asked. It was Stellan's beta, Daphne, not Stellan himself. Kieran's voice was carefully neutral. She came with a message. My heart hammered against my ribs. What message? Stellan wants to invoke his parental rights. He's claiming that you kidnapped his children and demanding their return to Moonvale. The world tilted sideways. He rejected me. He abandoned us. He has no rights. Legally, it's complicated. Kieran's jaw tightened. Pack law gives biological fathers certain claims, even after rejection. Especially if the rejection was of the mother and not explicitly of the children. So, he can just take them? The question came out as a whisper of pure terror. After everything, he can just show up and take my babies?
No.
The single word carried absolute conviction. He can't take them, because I won't allow it. But Vesper, this is going to get messy. Stellan is threatening to bring this before the Council of Alphas, to make it a legal battle. If that happens, you'll need to be prepared to fight. I'll fight. The words came out fierce, feral. I'll do whatever it takes. He doesn't get to waltz back into their lives after a year of silence. He doesn't get to. My voice cracked. They're mine. I'm the one who's been there every single day. I'm the one who went hungry so they could eat. I'm the one who... I know. Kieran stepped closer, his presence solid and grounding. And that's exactly what we'll prove. But to do that, you need to make a decision right now. What decision? Join the Northern Kingdom officially. Become a pack. Because if you're under my protection as a pack member, Stellan can't touch you without going through me first. And trust me, he doesn't want to do that. It was the trap I'd been waiting for. Except it didn't feel like a trap. It felt like a lifeline thrown to a drowning woman. If I join your pack, I said slowly. What does that mean? What am I agreeing to? It means you accept the pack bond. You contribute to the community in whatever way you're able, and you receive the full protection and resources of the Northern Kingdom. It means the children are registered as pack members with all the rights and securities that entails. Kieran's eyes held mine, amber catching the last rays of sunset. It means Stellan would have to prove to the council that removing them from an established pack is in their best interest, which he won't be able to do. And you? I asked. What do you get out of this? I get to keep you safe. I get to honor the promise I made to myself after Celine died. I have to prove that not all alphas are like Stellan Cross. Behind us, I could hear Aloan stirring, her small voice asking Malachi where I was. Could hear the twins starting to fuss, needing dinner and baths and bedtime stories. Could hear Aurelia beginning to cry with that particular pitch that meant she was hungry. My children. My 5 impossible, beautiful reasons for everything. Okay, I said. I'll join the pack. We'll stay. The smile that crossed Kieran's face was like dawn breaking. You're sure? I'm terrified. But yes, I'm sure. He pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. I'm calling an emergency pack meeting for tonight. We'll perform the bonding ceremony immediately. The sooner you're official, the sooner Stellan loses any legal leverage he thinks he has. Tonight? But the children. Bring them. This is a pack ceremony, Vesper. Your children are part of this too. Let them see what it means to belong somewhere. And as the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, as my children gathered around us with questions and wonder in their eyes, I realized something fundamental. I wasn't making this choice out of desperation anymore. I was making it out of hope. Chapter 5. The Bonding. The pack gathering space was a large open pavilion in the center of the kingdom, surrounded by ancient trees and lit by strings of lights that created a warm golden glow against the deepening twilight. By the time we arrived, me carrying Aurelia, Kieran carrying a sleepy Aloan, Talia and Malachi herding the twins, and Tobias, it seemed like the entire pack had assembled. Hundreds of faces, all turned toward us with expressions ranging from curiosity to welcome to something that looked like understanding. I wanted to run. I wanted to grab my children and disappear back into anonymity where rejection couldn't find us. But Kieran's hand found the small of my back, steady and warm. And somehow I kept moving forward. Northern Kingdom. Kieran's voice rang out across the gathered wolves, carrying the weight of authority that made even the wind seem to still. Tonight we welcome new members to our pack. Vesper Thorne and her 5 children, Aloan, Caspian, Linnea, Tobias, and Aurelia, seek sanctuary and belonging among us. He paused, letting his gaze sweep across the assembled faces. They come to us from hardship, from rejection, from a world that failed to protect them. I felt tears burning behind my eyes as hundreds of wolves watched us. But these weren't the hostile stares of Moonvale. These were eyes filled with empathy, with recognition of shared struggles, with acceptance. Vesper has survived what would have destroyed many wolves, Kieran continued, his voice carrying that resonance that made my damaged wolf stir deep within. She has protected her children through impossible circumstances. She has shown strength, resilience, and courage that honor what it means to be packed. He turned slightly, his amber eyes finding mine in the lamplight. And so I ask you, will you accept them? Will you claim them as your own? Will you stand with them against any who would seek to harm them? The response was immediate and overwhelming. We will. The sound of hundreds of voices raised in unison made my breath catch, made my knees weak, made something inside my chest crack open and flood with warmth. Aloan lifted her head from Kieran's shoulder, her eyes wide with wonder. Even the twins seemed awed into silence, their small hands clutching Malachi's and Talia's fingers. Kieran turned to me fully now, his expression solemn, but his eyes warm. Vesper Thorne, do you accept the Northern Kingdom as your pack? Do you swear to contribute what you can, to honor the bonds of community, to stand with your pack members in times of need? My voice came out stronger than I expected. I do. Then by my authority as Alpha King, I claim you and your children as a pack. You are no longer alone. You are no longer unprotected. He pressed his hand to my forehead, and I felt it, a rush of connection like roots spreading through earth, linking me to every wolf present. It wasn't the mate bond I'd lost with Stellan. It was something different, broader, more inclusive. Pack bond.
Community.
Belonging. My wolf, silent for so long, suddenly surged to life with a strength that staggered me. Not fully healed. The damage from rejection ran too deep for that. But waking up. Present. Connected. You are Northern Kingdom, Kieran said, his voice resonating through the bond that now tied us together. And we are yours. The pack erupted in cheers and howls, the sound primal and beautiful and right. Aloan giggled with delight, and the twins started howling along in their childish way, making everyone laugh. Even Tobias made a small sound of wonder, his eyes bright in the lamplight. Talia appeared at my side with tears streaming down her face. Welcome home, she whispered, pulling me into a fierce hug. Others followed, pack members I'd met, and many I hadn't, each one offering welcome in their own way. Some brought their children to meet mine. Others simply squeezed my hand or offered soft words of support. Bronte from the daycare promised Aloan she could help with the younger children whenever she wanted. A teenager named Sage offered to babysit. An older woman named Fiona insisted I come to the weekly mothers group. It was overwhelming and wonderful and terrifying all at once. A feast had been laid out on long tables, more food than I'd seen in months. Roasted meats and fresh bread, vegetables that actually looked like vegetables instead of the wilted produce I could afford, desserts that made the children's eyes go wide. Eat, Kieran said, guiding us to seats that had been reserved. Celebrate. You're back now, Vesper. This is what that means. The celebration lasted hours, but eventually the children's energy flagged. Caspian and Linnea fell asleep against each other in a chair, their twin bond evident even in slumber. Tobias curled up in my lap, his thumb in his mouth, finally peaceful. Aurelia had nursed and dozed, content in the safety of pack energy surrounding us. Only Aloan remained awake, watching everything with those ancient eyes of hers. Mama, she said quietly, tugging on my sleeve. Does this mean we get to stay? For real? I looked around at the faces of wolves who'd welcomed us without question. At Talia, who'd become a friend in just 3 days. Malachi, who was patiently explaining something to a group of teenagers. At Vance and Gareth, standing guard but smiling. At Kieran, who stood slightly apart, talking with pack members, but whose gaze kept finding mine across the pavilion. Yes, baby, I said, smoothing her hair back. We get to stay. For real. Good. She yawned, leaning against my shoulder. I like it here. Nobody's mean. And there's so much food. Out of the mouths of children. Later, after we'd returned to the house, our house now officially, and I'd gotten all 5 children bathed and tucked into their beds, their actual beds with soft mattresses and clean sheets, I stood in the doorway of their room and watched them sleep. They looked different already. Less tense. Less afraid. As if some fundamental tension they'd been carrying had finally released. They're beautiful. I turned to find Kieran standing in the hallway, his expression soft in the dim light. Thank you, I said quietly. For all of this.
For the ceremony.
For making them feel welcome. I gestured helplessly. Everything. You don't need to thank me, Vesper. This is what Pack does. Talia said the same thing. But it's still hard to accept. That kindness can exist without strings attached. Kieran was quiet for a moment, studying me. Stellan really did a number on you, didn't he? He made me believe I was worthless. That being Omega meant being disposable. That asking for help was a weakness. I wrapped my arms around myself. And then I spent a year proving him right by barely surviving. You weren't proving him right. Kieran's voice was firm. You were proving him wrong. Every day you kept those children alive, every sacrifice you made, every impossible choice. That was strength, Vesper. That was worth it. He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from him. Stellan's rejection had nothing to do with your value, and everything to do with his cowardice. He was too weak to handle a mate with actual needs, too selfish to put anyone before himself. You don't know that. Maybe I really was. Stop. The command in his voice made me fall silent. I know exactly what you were because I've seen what you are now. You're a survivor, a warrior, a mother who would burn the world down to protect her children. His amber eyes held mine, intense and unwavering. That's not a weakness, Vesper. That's the kind of strength that builds packs and raises kingdoms.
I didn't know what to say to that.
I didn't know how to accept praise that contradicted everything I'd believed about myself for the past year. I should let you rest, Kieran said, reading my discomfort. Tomorrow we'll start preparing for whatever legal challenge Stellan might bring. But tonight, just sleep. Let yourself feel safe. He turned to leave, but I found myself reaching out, my hand catching his sleeve. Kieran, why do I feel different? Since the bonding ceremony, my wolf, she's louder, more present. I thought the damage from rejection was permanent. Understanding crossed his face. The pack bond doesn't heal rejection damage, but it can support your wolf. Give her strength through community connection. Think of it as scaffolding. Your wolf can lean on the pack bond when her own foundation is weak. So I'll never fully heal? The damage will always be there, he said gently. But with time, with training, with the pack support, you can rebuild around it. You can become stronger than you were before. Hope flickered in my chest, fragile but persistent. You really believe that? I know it. I've seen it happen before. He smiled slightly. Get some rest, Vesper. Tomorrow's a new beginning. After he left, I checked on the children one more time. All 5 of them were sleeping peacefully, their faces relaxed in ways I hadn't seen in months. Then I went to my own room, my actual room, with a real bed and privacy and a door that locked. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I lay down without fear. Without the constant calculation of how many hours until I had to wake, how many problems needed solving, how many impossible choices awaited. Through the window, I could see the forest stretching into darkness, hear the distant sounds of pack members heading to their own homes, feel the pulse of the pack bond humming beneath my skin like a second heartbeat. We were safe. We were home. And tomorrow, when Stellan tried to take that away, we'd be ready to fight. I woke to sunlight and the sound of children's laughter. Not the desperate, too loud laughter that covered fear, but genuine joy. Racing downstairs, I found Talia in my kitchen again, this time with Bronte, both women coordinating what looked like a small army operation of breakfast preparation. The twins were helping by making a tower of pancakes on the table. Tobias was actually talking actual words, telling Bronte about a dream he'd had. And Eloan was setting the table with exaggerated care, taking her job as eldest seriously, but smiling as she worked. "Good morning, sleepyhead," Talia said with a grin. "We figured you could use another morning of actual rest." I could have. Nope. Bronte pointed a spatula at me. "Pack takes care of Pack. Sit down, and let us feed you for once." So I sat. And I ate. And I watched my children interact with women who'd chosen to help us not because they owed us anything, but because that's what family did. And I let myself believe just a little more that maybe this was real. That maybe we really had found home. Kieran arrived as breakfast was winding down, Malachi and Gareth with him. Their expressions were serious, Alpha King business, not social visit. "Vesper," Kieran said, accepting a cup of coffee from Talia with a nod of thanks. "We need to talk about Stellan's challenge." My stomach dropped. He's really going through with it? His lawyer contacted the Council of Alphas this morning. He's filing formal documents claiming parental rights and requesting custody transfer. On what grounds? Anger spiked hot in my chest. He hasn't seen them in a year. Hasn't paid a cent of support. Haven't even asked about them. "He's claiming you were unstable after the rejection," Gareth said, his voice gentle but factual. "That you fled without giving him a chance to establish custody arrangements. That you're living in another pack's territory without his permission. That's bullshit." The curse slipped out before I could stop it. I glanced at the children, but they were absorbed in their pancake tower. "He rejected me. He made it clear he wanted nothing to do with us. We know." Kieran's voice was calm, grounding. "And we'll prove it.
But we need to be smart about this.
The council is bound by pack law, which means we need to demonstrate that the children are better off here than in Moonvale." "Which they obviously are," Malachi added. "But we need documentation. Medical records showing their health has improved. School enrollment. Statements from pack members about their integration. Evidence that you're providing a stable, supportive environment." "Which you absolutely are," Talia interjected fiercely. "And every person in this pack will testify to that." Kieran set down his coffee cup, his expression hardening into something that reminded me he wasn't just a kind alpha, he was the Alpha King. Stellan is going to argue that as their biological father, he has rights that supersede pack bonds. We're going to argue that he forfeited those rights through abandonment and that removing the children from an established pack would cause psychological harm. "When?" I asked. "When does this go before the council?" 2 weeks. The hearing is scheduled for the full moon. 2 weeks. 14 days to prepare for a battle that could determine whether my children stayed with me or were handed over to a father who'd never wanted them. What do I need to do? Kieran's expression softened slightly. "You need to let us help you. Let the pack rally around you. Let us build a case so strong that the council has no choice but to rule in your favor. And if they don't," the question came out small, afraid. "They will." His voice carried absolute certainty. "Because I'm not going to let Stellan Cross take your children. That's not a hope, Vesper. That's a promise." The conviction in his words settled something inside me. We had 2 weeks. 2 weeks to prove that love mattered more than biology. That chosen family was stronger than blood. Those 5 children who'd finally found safety deserved to keep it. Okay, I said, straightening my spine. Tell me what to do. I'll do whatever it takes. Kieran smiled, not the gentle expression he used with my children, but something sharper, more dangerous. The smile of an alpha king preparing for war. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. Chapter 6. Building the case. The next 2 weeks became a carefully orchestrated campaign to prove what I already knew in my bones, that my children belonged with me, in the Northern Kingdom, safe and loved and thriving. Kieran approached it with military precision. We need 3 things, he explained that first afternoon, spreading documents across the dining room table while the children played in the backyard under Talia's watchful eye. Medical evidence, social integration, and character witnesses. Medical evidence is easy, Dr. Winters said, appearing with a thick folder. Eloan's bronchitis cleared up within a week of proper treatment. All 5 children have gained weight. Their anxiety markers are down. Developmentally, they're all progressing as they should. Tobias is even starting to talk more. He laid out charts and graphs that translated my children's transformation into clinical data. This, he tapped a particular page, shows the correlation between stable housing, adequate nutrition, and childhood wellness. Any council member with medical knowledge will see that these children are demonstrably healthier here than they were in your previous situation. Which Stellan will argue was my fault, I said bitterly. That I failed to provide for them. Actually, he won't. Gareth's voice was dry as autumn leaves. Because if he argues you were an inadequate parent, we'll ask why he never intervened. Why he never paid support. Why did he reject a pregnant mate in the first place? He smiled, sharp as a blade. Stellan's lawyer knows this. They'll have to walk a very careful line, claiming he wants his children without admitting he abandoned them. Social integration. Malachi continued, pulling out another folder. The children are enrolled in PAC school starting next week. Eloan tested into the advanced reading group. The twins are registered for the 4-year-old program. We have statements from Bronte at the daycare about how well Tobias and the twins have adapted. Neighbors, Talia added, entering with a tray of coffee. The Caldwell family next door has 3 kids around the same ages. They've been playing together every afternoon. Mrs. Caldwell is prepared to testify that your children are polite, well-adjusted, and happy. The PAC school counselor wants to do evaluations, Kieran said. With your permission. Nothing invasive, just standard assessments to show that the children are psychologically healthy and bonding appropriately with their new environment. I looked at the mountain of evidence accumulating on my dining room table, proof of what I'd been living but translated into language the Council of Alphas would understand. And character witnesses? That's the easy part. Kieran's smile was almost predatory. Half the pack has volunteered. We'll select the most credible, Dr. Winters, Bronte, the school principal, the neighbors. People who've observed your parenting and can speak to your competence. What about you? I asked. Will you testify? I'll do more than testify. His amber eyes held mine. I'll be representing you as your alpha. Stellan will have his lawyer, but you'll have me. And trust me, Vesper, I don't lose battles that matter. The confidence in his voice should have felt arrogant. Instead, it felt like armor I desperately needed. The days blurred together in a flurry of preparation. Dr. Winters conducted thorough examinations of all 5 children, documenting every improvement. Eloan's lungs were clear. The twins had gained 3 pounds each. Tobias's language development showed marked progress. Aurelia was hitting all her milestones. Look at this, Dr. Winters said, showing me growth charts. Caspian and Linnea were in the 20th percentile for weight when you arrived. They're now in their 40s. That kind of improvement doesn't happen by accident. The PAC school counselor, a gentle woman named Iris, spent hours with each child individually, not interrogating, just playing and talking and observing. Eloan shows signs of having shouldered adult responsibilities too young, she told me after the evaluations. But she's responding well to having those burdens lifted. She's starting to play like a child again instead of acting like a parent. That observation hurt and healed simultaneously. The twins have a beautiful bond, Iris continued. Very typical for multiples their age. No signs of trauma or attachment issues. And Tobias. She smiled. Tobias is coming out of his shell. Yesterday, he told me a whole story about a dragon and a castle. 5 minutes of continuous speech. I cried hearing that. My silent boy, finding his voice in a place where he felt safe enough to speak. Character witnesses lined up faster than Kieran could coordinate them. Talia, of course. Bronte from the daycare. The neighbors, not just the Caldwells, but the Reeves family on the other side, and the Morgans across the street. The Pack school principal, who'd only met us briefly but was prepared to discuss enrollment policies and our commitment to education. Even some of the teenagers who'd welcomed us that first day volunteered to speak about how they'd seen me interacting with my children in public spaces, grocery stores, parks, community events. The council needs to see you're not isolated, Gareth explained. That you're integrated into Pack life. That you have support systems. Which I do now, I said, looking around my living room where half a dozen Pack members had gathered for what Talia called a prep session, but what felt more like a family rallying around one of their own. You always did, Talia corrected gently. You just couldn't access it before. That's not a failing on your part, Vesper. That's a failing of Stellan's Pack for not supporting you. At night, after the children were asleep and the Pack members had returned to their homes, Kieran and I would sit at the dining room table and go over strategy. Stellan's lawyer will argue biological imperative, Kieran said on the 5th night, reviewing legal precedents. That Pack law recognizes a father's right to his offspring regardless of rejection status. How do we counter that? We argue that Pack law also recognizes the principle of best interest of the child. That biological connection doesn't supersede psychological welfare. That removing children from a stable, thriving environment to return them to a father who abandoned them would constitute harm. He pulled out another document. We also have precedent from the Clearwater case 3 years ago. Alpha Marcus Clearwater tried to claim custody of children he'd abandoned after rejecting his mate. The council ruled against him, stating that parental rights are not absolute but must be exercised in good faith from the moment of birth. Stellan never exercised his rights in good faith, I said, anger simmering. He rejected me while I was pregnant. Never paid support. Never visited. Never even acknowledged them. Exactly. And we have documentation of that. Bank records showing no financial transfers. No written correspondence. No attempts at contact. Kieran's expression was grim. The only reason he's claiming them now is because he found out you're under my protection. This is about ego, not fatherhood. So, it's a power play. Everything with alphas like Stellan is a power play. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. How are you holding up? This can't be easy, having your life dissected and documented. I considered the question honestly. It's strange, invasive, but also validating. Like all the sacrifices I made, all the impossible choices, they're finally visible. They matter. They always mattered, Vesper. The council just needs to see it in their language. A comfortable silence fell between us, broken only by the sound of Kieran's pen as he made notes in the margins of legal documents. Can I ask you something? I said finally. Anything. Why are you spending so much time on this personally? You're the Alpha King. Don't you have other responsibilities? In other cases, other Pack members who need you. Kieran set down his pen and looked at me directly. I have 347 Pack members across 17 territories. Most of them handle their issues through local alphas or councils. The ones that reach me are usually complex, border disputes, inter-Pack conflicts, challenges to authority. He paused. This case? This isn't just another file on my desk, Vesper. This is about whether Pack law means anything. Whether rejection has consequences. Whether mothers who fight for their children are supported or abandoned. His voice dropped lower. And selfishly, this is about proving to myself that I can save someone like my sister. That I won't fail again. The raw honesty in his admission made my chest tight. You're not failing. You're the reason my children are thriving. The reason I can breathe again. Good. His eyes held mine, amber glowing in the lamplight. Because watching you transform over these past 2 weeks, watching you realize your own strength, that's been worth every hour I've spent on this case. The moment stretched between us, charged with something I wasn't ready to name. Finally, I broke eye contact, looking down at the scattered documents. What happens if we lose? I asked quietly. If the council rules in Stellan's favor? We won't. But if we do... Vesper. The command in his voice made me look up. We are not going to lose. I have prepared for every possible argument, every legal loophole, every trick Stellan's lawyer might attempt. I have documentation, precedent, and the testimony of dozens of credible witnesses. He leaned forward, intensity radiating from him. More importantly, I have the truth. Your children are safer, healthier, and happier here than they ever were under Stellan's nominal care. Any council member with eyes will see that. And if they're blind? His smile was sharp. Then I'll make them see. That's what Alpha Kings do. On the 10th day, something unexpected happened. I was at the pack school with Aloan, finalizing her enrollment paperwork, when a woman approached me in the hallway. Mid-30s, with kind eyes and a tired smile. Vesper Thorne, she asked hesitantly. Yes, I'm Maya. I heard about your case. About what you're fighting for. She glanced around, then lowered her voice. I was rejected by my mate 4 years ago, pregnant with twins. I tried to make it work alone, but... She trailed off, pain flickering across her face. I lost them. Both of them. Premature birth I couldn't afford proper care for. My heart broke for her. I'm so sorry. Don't be. She straightened her spine. I'm telling you this because I want to testify. I want the council to hear what rejection does to Omegas, to our children. I want them to understand that Stellan's abandonment had real consequences. You don't have to. Yes, I do. Her voice was firm. Because if speaking my truth helps keep your children with you, then maybe their loss meant something. Maybe I can prevent another mother from going through what I did. I couldn't speak. Could only nod and pull this stranger, this sister in suffering, into a hug. When I told Kieran about Maya that evening, his expression was thoughtful. That kind of testimony could be powerful. But Vesper, it's also risky. Stellan's lawyer will argue that her situation was different, that correlation isn't causation. But it's not different, I insisted. It's the same pattern. Rejection, abandonment, struggling alone, children suffering. That's what happens when alphas discard their mates without consequences. I agree. And if Maya is willing, we'll include her testimony. He made a note. It helps establish that this isn't just about you and Stellan. It's about systemic issues in how pack law handles rejection. Which is what you want, isn't it? Not just to win this case, but to change how rejection is treated. Kieran's smile was sharp with purpose. You're learning to think like an alpha king. Yes, this case is about your children. But it's also about setting precedent. About making other alphas think twice before abandoning pregnant mates. Using my pain for politics, I said, but without bitterness. Using your pain for justice, he corrected. There's a difference. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I'd checked on the children 3 times. All of them peaceful, unaware that tomorrow would determine their future. That strangers would sit in judgment and decide whether they stayed in the only real home they'd ever known. Around midnight, I gave up on sleep and went downstairs, intending to review my testimony one more time. I found Kieran already there, surrounded by documents, his hair disheveled from running his hands through it. Couldn't sleep either? I asked. He looked up, and in the dim light, I could see the exhaustion in his eyes. Too much writing tomorrow. You've done everything possible. Built an incredible case. It's never enough. His voice was rough. There's always something we could have missed, some argument we didn't anticipate. I moved to sit beside him, our shoulders almost touching. You know what I realized today?
What?
Win or lose tomorrow, you've already changed everything for us. 2 weeks ago, I was facing eviction with 5 hungry children and no hope. Now I have a home, a pack, support, medical care, and friends. I looked at him directly. You've already saved us, Kieran. The hearing is just making it official. Something shifted in his expression. Gratitude mixed with determination, mixed with something deeper. I can't lose you, he said quietly. Can't lose them. Not after watching you all bloom here. Not after. He stopped, seeming to catch himself. Not after what? Not after realizing that maybe Celine sent you to me, he said finally. That maybe this is how I finally make peace with failing her, by not failing you. My hand found his on the table, threading our fingers together. You're not going to fail us. I believe that now. He squeezed my hand, drawing strength from the contact. Get some sleep, Vesper. Tomorrow we face the council together. And tomorrow we win. I nodded and stood to go, but paused at the doorway. Kieran? Yes. Thank you. For everything. For seeing us when we were invisible. For fighting when I was too tired to fight for myself. For being the alpha Stellan never was. His eyes glowed amber in the darkness. Thank you for trusting me. For letting me help. For giving me a chance to be what I should have been for Celine. I climbed the stairs to bed, his words echoing in my mind. Tomorrow will determine everything. But tonight, I let myself believe in the possibility of victory. In the strength of pack bonds and legal precedent and an alpha king who didn't lose battles that mattered. Tomorrow, we will face the Council of Alphas. And tomorrow, we will prove that love is stronger than biology. That chosen family was more powerful than blood. Those 5 children deserved to stay in the home where they'd finally learned to be children again. Chapter 7. The Council's Judgment. The Council of Alphas convened in a massive stone chamber that reeked of old power and older traditions. 12 alphas sat in a semicircle on an elevated platform, their faces carved from granite and centuries of authority. Behind them, ancient pack symbols had been etched into the walls, wolves and moons and words and languages that predated modern speech. The room was designed to intimidate, and it worked. I sat at a table facing the council, Kieran on my right, his presence solid and grounding. Behind us, packed into gallery seating, were what seemed like half the Northern Kingdom: Talia, Malachi, Vance, Gareth, Bronte, Dr. Winters, neighbors, pack members who'd taken time from their lives to support someone they'd known for only 2 weeks. Across the aisle, Stellan sat with his lawyer, a sleek wolf in an expensive suit who looked like he ate omegas for breakfast. And beside Stellan, perfect and poised, sat Daphne, her hand resting possessively on his arm. Looking at him now, this alpha who'd once been my entire world, I felt nothing. No residual love. No lingering pain. Just a cold, detached assessment of a man who'd proven himself a coward. He looked prosperous. Well-fed. Content. Everything I'd struggled to achieve, while he'd moved on without consequence. That was about to change. Order. The head counselor, an ancient female alpha named Callista with silver hair and eyes like winter storms, struck her gavel. We convened to hear the matter of Stellan Cross versus Vesper Thorne, regarding custody of 5 minor children. Stellan's lawyer stood smoothly. Thank you, counselor. I represent Alpha Stellan Cross of Moonvale Pack, who seeks to establish his rightful parental custody of his biological children, currently being held by Ms. Thorne in the Northern Kingdom, without his consent. Held, I hissed to Kieran. He makes it sound like I kidnapped them. That's exactly what he wants the council to think, Kieran murmured. Stay calm. Our turn is coming. The lawyer continued, voice smooth as oil. Alpha Cross acknowledges that the relationship with Ms. Thorne ended in rejection, a painful but legal dissolution of a mate bond. However, rejection of a mate does not constitute rejection of offspring. Pack law is clear that biological fathers retain parental rights unless those rights are formally terminated or transferred. He pulled out documents, distributing copies to the council. Alpha Cross has never waived his rights. Never signed adoption papers. Never agreed to Ms. Thorne taking their children across state lines to join another pack. In fact, he only learned of their location 2 weeks ago, when Ms. Thorne formally bonded with the Northern Kingdom. Because he never bothered to look for us, I whispered furiously. Kieran's hand found mine under the table, squeezing gently. Patience. Alpha Cross is now in a stable position to provide for his children, the lawyer said. He has a home, resources, and a new mate, he gestured to Daphne, who is prepared to serve as stepmother. He requests that the council recognize his rights and order the children's return to Moonvale Pack. Counselor Callista's expression revealed nothing. Does Alpha Cross wish to speak? Stellan stood, and I was struck by how small he seemed. Not physically, he was still tall, still muscular, still radiating alpha dominance. But small in character, diminished by his own choices. Honored Council, he began, his voice carrying false humility. I made mistakes with Vesper. I won't deny that. The rejection was hasty. But I never intended to abandon my children. I believed Vesper needed space to process the bond severance. When I learned she'd fled to another kingdom, I was concerned for their welfare.
Lies.
Every word dripped with manufactured concern. These are my bloodline, Stellan continued. My legacy. They belong in Moonvale, learning our traditions, connected to their paternal pack. I'm prepared to provide everything they need: education, security, family. He sat down, looking appropriately solemn and fatherly. It was a masterful performance. And complete bullshit. Alpha Kieran Ashford, representing Vesper Thorne, Counselor Callista said. You may present your case. Kieran stood, and the energy in the room shifted immediately. Where Stellan's lawyer had been smooth and polished, Kieran's raw power was barely contained. Where Stellan had performed humility, Kieran radiated absolute authority. Honored Council, he began, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. This case is not about parental rights. It's about parental responsibility. And Alpha Cross has demonstrated none. He gestured to his own stack of documents. I present evidence that Alpha Cross provided zero financial support for his children during the year following rejection. Zero communication. Zero inquiries about their welfare. Zero attempts to establish any relationship whatsoever. He distributed the bank records, the lack of correspondence, the testimony from Moonvale Pack members confirming Stellan had never mentioned the children. Alpha Cross claims he believed Ms. Thorne needed space. But Pack law requires that even in cases of rejection, biological fathers must provide support. Alpha Cross violated this requirement for 12 months. Kieran's voice hardened. He claims concern for their welfare, yet made no effort to locate them until learning they were under my protection. This sudden interest in fatherhood has nothing to do with love and everything to do with ego. Stellan's lawyer shot to his feet. Objection. Alpha Ashford is engaging in character assassination rather than legal argument. Overruled, Counselor Callista said dryly. Character is directly relevant to custody determinations. Continue, Alpha Ashford. Kieran nodded. The question before this council is not whether Alpha Cross has biological rights, but whether exercising those rights serves the children's best interests. I argue it does not. He called Dr. Winters first. The doctor presented medical evidence with clinical precision, growth charts showing the children's improvement, psychological assessments demonstrating their positive adjustment, documentation of Alohan's bronchitis that went untreated for days because Vesper couldn't afford medicine. In my professional opinion, Dr. Winters concluded, removing these children from their current environment would constitute medical harm. They are thriving in ways they couldn't before, and disruption of this stability would be detrimental to their health. Next came Bronte from the daycare, who spoke about watching Tobias find his voice, about the twins' joy in having friends, about Alohan finally being allowed to be a child instead of a caretaker. I've worked with children for 30 years, Bronte said firmly. I know the difference between children who are surviving and children who are thriving. Vesper's children are thriving. The neighbors testified about watching our family integrate into the community. The school principal discussed Alohan's enrollment and academic testing. PAC members spoke about seeing us at community events, about my participation in mothers' groups, about the visible transformation in all 5 children. Then Kieran called Maya. The woman who'd lost her own twins after rejection walked to the stand with quiet dignity, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of experience too painful to fabricate. I was rejected while pregnant 4 years ago, she said. Like Vesper, I tried to make it alone. Like Vesper, I struggle without pack support or financial assistance. Unlike Vesper, I didn't survive it. My twins were born premature because I couldn't afford proper prenatal care. They lived for 2 days. Her eyes found Stellan across the room. When alphas reject pregnant mates, they don't just sever a bond. They sentence omegas and their children to hardship that often ends in tragedy. Alpha Cross's claim that he didn't intend harm is irrelevant. The harm occurred. Vesper and her children barely survived it. The gallery was silent. Even the council members looked affected. Stellan's lawyer tried to object, to argue that Maya's case was different, but Counselor Callista waved him off. The witness has established pattern and precedent. Her testimony stands. Finally, Kieran called me. Walking to the stand felt like moving through water. Every step weighted with the knowledge that my words could determine everything. Counselor Callista studied me with those winter storm eyes. Miss Thorne, why did you leave Moonvale Pack after your rejection? I took a breath, steadying myself. Because staying was killing me.
Slowly.
The bond severance damaged my wolf so severely I could barely shift. I had no pack support. Alpha Cross made it clear I was unwelcome. I couldn't afford to live there without employment, and no one would hire a rejected Omega with 3 children and pregnant with twins. Why didn't you request support from Alpha Cross? I did. Multiple times. He never responded. And yet you chose to struggle alone in the human world rather than appeal to this council for assistance. The question felt like a trap. I didn't think anyone would help. Rejected Omegas aren't exactly priorities for pack law. Until Alpha Ashford found you. Yes. Why do you believe your children should remain in the Northern Kingdom rather than return to their biological father? I looked directly at Stellan, then back to the council. Because he doesn't want them. He wants to prove he can control me. He wants to punish me for finding safety without him. My voice strengthened. For a year, he didn't care if they were alive or dead. Didn't care if they were hungry or sick or scared. The only reason he cares now is because I'm no longer suffering. That's a serious accusation, Miss Thorne. It's the truth, Counselor. And my children deserve a father who actually wants them, not one who claims them as property when his ego is bruised. Stellan's lawyer leaped up. The witness is being inflammatory. The witness is answering my questions honestly, Callista interrupted, which is more than I can say for your client.
She turned back to me.
What do you want, Miss Thorne? I want my children to stay where they're safe, where they have friends and school and medical care and a pack that actually values them. I want them to grow up knowing they matter, that they're loved, that they're not mistakes to be hidden away. My voice cracked. I want them to have what I never had, a chance to be happy. The council deliberated for 2 hours. 2 hours of sitting in an anteroom while Kieran paced and Talia held my hand, and the children, who'd been kept away from the hearing, played with Malachi in another part of the building, oblivious to the decision being made about their future. You did well, Kieran said for the 3rd time. Your testimony was powerful. But was it enough? It has to be. Finally, a clerk appeared. The council has reached a decision. We filed back into the chamber. The gallery had filled even more. Word must have spread that judgment was imminent. Counselor Callista's expression was unreadable as she stood. The Council of Alphas has reviewed the evidence and testimony in the matter of Stellan Cross versus Vesper Thorne. We acknowledge that pack law traditionally recognizes biological parental rights. However, we also recognize that such rights are not absolute and must be balanced against the welfare of the children in question. My heart hammered so hard I thought everyone must hear it. The evidence presented demonstrates clearly that the 5 children of this union have thrived in the Northern Kingdom under Ms. Thorne's care and Alpha Ashford's protection. Medical records show improved health. Educational assessments show appropriate development. Psychological evaluations show secure attachment and positive adjustment. She paused, her gaze finding Stellan. Conversely, Alpha Cross demonstrated a clear pattern of abandonment and neglect. His provision of zero financial support, zero communication, and zero effort to locate or contact his children for 12 months constitutes a de facto forfeiture of parental rights. Stellan's face went red. His lawyer started to stand, but Callista's look froze him in place. Alpha Cross's sudden interest in custody only after learning Miss Thorne had found sanctuary and support suggests motivations unrelated to the children's welfare. This council will not enable such manipulation. She struck her gavel once. Therefore, we rule in favor of Vesper Thorne.
Full custody is granted.
Alpha Cross's parental rights are hereby terminated. The children will remain in the Northern Kingdom as bonded pack members. This decision is final and binding under pack law. The gallery erupted. Cheers from the Northern Kingdom members. Shouts of protest from Moonvale wolves who'd come to support Stellan. The crack of Callista's gavel demanded order. But I heard none of it, because Kieran had pulled me into his arms, and I was crying, great, gasping sobs of relief and joy and disbelief that we'd actually won. It's over, he murmured against my hair. They're yours. Officially, legally, permanently. He can never touch them again. We won, I choked out. We actually won. I told you we would. Talia wrapped around us both, then Malachi, then it seemed like half the pack was surrounding us in a group embrace that felt like coming home. Across the room, Stellan stood frozen, his face a mask of fury and humiliation. Daphne whispered something to him, trying to lead him away, but he shook her off. For a moment, his eyes met mine. And I saw it, the realization that he'd lost. Not just custody, but power. Not just the children, but the ability to hurt me ever again. I could have gloated, could have thrown his own words back at him. Instead, I simply turned away. He wasn't worth my anger anymore. Wasn't worth my thoughts or energy or time. He was nothing. And I was free. Outside the council chamber, I called the children. Malachi brought them from the play area. All 5 of them excited about the field trip they'd been on, unaware of the battle that had been waged for their future. Mama. Aloan ran to me. We saw the big stone building. And Malachi, let's climb trees. I gathered her close, then opened my arms to include all of them, Caspian and Linnea pressing against my legs, Tobias climbing into my lap, Aurelia cooing from where Talia still held her. We're staying, I told them, my voice thick with emotion. In the Northern Kingdom. In our house. Forever. Forever. Aloan's eyes went wide. We don't have to leave?
Never.
This is our home now. Officially. What about our old daddy? She asked, that too knowing look in her young eyes. He's not part of our lives anymore, sweetheart. It's just us. Our family. And the pack, Caspian added solemnly. And the pack, I agreed, smiling through tears. Kieran crouched down beside us, his presence completing our little circle. You know what this means? He asked the children conspiratorially. They shook their heads. It means we get to celebrate. Ice cream for dinner. Movies. The whole works. The children cheered, their joy pure and uncomplicated. And as we walked out of that stone chamber into afternoon sunlight, surrounded by pack members who'd fought for us, protected us, claimed us as their own, I realized something fundamental had shifted. For the first time since Stellan's rejection, I wasn't just surviving. I was living. And my children, my 5 beautiful miracles, were free to do the same. Chapter 8. Foundations of Healing. The celebration that night was everything childhood should be, chaotic, joyful, and utterly free of fear. Kieran made good on his promise. Ice cream for dinner, served in bowls, so large that Caspian and Linnea's eyes went comically wide. A movie projected onto the living room wall, some animated adventure about dragons that had all 5 children entranced. Popcorn that ended up more on the floor than in mouths.
And laughter.
So much laughter it felt like the house itself was breathing differently, lighter somehow. I sat on the couch with Aurelia drowsing in my arms, watching my children be children, and felt something inside my chest finally unclenching. A tension I'd carried for so long I'd forgotten it wasn't a permanent part of my anatomy. They're beautiful when they're happy, Talia said softly, settling beside me with her own cup of tea. They're always beautiful. But yes, this is different. This is what safety looks like. She gestured to where Tobias had fallen asleep against Kieran's side, the Alpha King absently stroking the boy's hair while pretending to watch the movie. When children know they're protected, they can finally relax enough to just be. He's good with them. Kieran? Talia smiled. He's good with anyone who needs protection. But with children especially. I think it's because of Celine's baby, the nephew he never got to meet. He sees every child as a second chance to get it right. I watched Kieran explain something about dragon flight patterns to Loan, his expression serious, as if her questions were the most important thing in the world. Does he ever? I trailed off, unsure how to ask. Does he ever do that? Want his own? A mate? Children? The traditional alpha legacy? Talia was quiet for a moment. I think he does. But Kieran doesn't do anything halfway. He won't take a mate unless it's real, not just biology or politics or convenience. And after everything he's seen, after watching what happened to Celine, she shrugged. He's cautious, selective, waiting for something worth the risk. Her eyes flicked to me, then away. Or someone. Before I could process that implication, Caspian launched himself at me, nearly dislodging Aurelia. Mama, the dragons saved the village. Did you see? I saw, baby. That was very heroic. I'm gonna be a dragon when I grow up, he announced with the absolute certainty of a 4-year-old. You'd make an excellent dragon, Kieran said seriously. Though being a wolf is pretty good too. Can I be both? In spirit, absolutely. The easy way Kieran engaged with my children, no condescension, no impatience, just genuine interest, made my chest tight with an emotion I wasn't ready to examine too closely. After the children were finally asleep, a process that took twice as long as usual thanks to sugar and excitement, the adults gathered in the kitchen. Malachi had brought wine. Talia produced a cake she'd apparently been hiding for the occasion. Vance and Gareth arrived with more pack members until my kitchen was full of people celebrating not just our victory, but what it represented. To Vesper, Kieran raised his glass. For being brave enough to fight, strong enough to win, and smart enough to let us help. To Vesper, the others echoed. I ducked my head, embarrassed by the attention but warmed by it too. To all of you, I countered. I didn't win alone. Every person in this room contributed to keeping my children safe. That's not something I'll ever forget. That's what pack means, Bronte said firmly. We don't keep score, remember? Speaking of which, Gareth interjected, his silver beard catching lamplight. We need to discuss next steps. Next steps? I asked, tension immediately creeping back. I thought it was over. The custody battle is over, Kieran clarified. But there are practical matters. Stellan's parental rights were terminated, which means we need to update legal documents, birth certificates, medical records, school enrollments. Everything that listed him as father needs to be corrected. Can we just erase him? Legally, yes. The children will be registered as yours alone, with a pack as secondary guardian per Northern Kingdom law. He pulled out a folder, because of course he'd already prepared documents. I've taken the liberty of drafting the paperwork. You just need to sign. I flipped through pages of official-looking forms, each one systematically removing Stellan Cross from my children's lives. What's this one? I pointed to a document titled Pack Guardian Designation. Standard protocol for single parents in the Northern Kingdom, Gareth explained. You designate a pack member as backup guardian, someone who would take custody if anything happened to you. Most people choose family, but given your situation, you can choose whoever you trust most, Kieran added. No pressure, no expectations. Just security for the children. I looked around the kitchen at faces that had become familiar over 2 weeks. Talia, who understood single motherhood. Bronte, who'd cared for my children with genuine affection. Malachi, who'd made Eloan laugh. Vance, who was surprisingly gentle despite his intimidating size. And Kieran, who'd found us in our darkest moment and refused to let us fall. Can I think about it? I asked. Of course. There's no rush. Kieran set aside the folder. Tonight is for celebrating, not paperwork. The evening dissolved into easy conversation and shared stories. Talia regaled everyone with tales of her teenager's latest drama. Malachi described a recent Border Patrol incident involving a very confused bear. Even serious Gareth contributed dry observations that had everyone laughing. I found myself relaxing in ways I hadn't since before Stellan's rejection. Not performing, not managing crises, not calculating odds of survival. Just existing. Being part of something larger than my own struggle. You're smiling again, Kieran observed quietly, having migrated to the chair beside mine while I was distracted by Vance's story about teaching pack children to track. I do that now, apparently. It suits you. You should do it more often. I'm out of practice. Give me time. His eyes held mine, amber warm in the soft light. You have all the time you need, Vesper. That's the point of safety. You can finally stop running long enough to heal. Is that what this is? Healing. The beginning of it, at least. He gestured to the kitchen full of pack members. Healing happens in the community. In moments like this, where you're not fighting to survive but learning to live again. You sound like you speak from experience. I do. After Celine died, I threw myself into building the kingdom. Work, politics, treaties, anything to avoid feeling what I'd lost. His expression grew distant. It took years before Talia basically staged an intervention. Made me see that I was surviving but not living. That honoring Celine's memory meant building the kind of world she'd wanted, not punishing myself for failing her. Did it work? The intervention. Eventually. Slowly. He refocused on me. Healing isn't linear, Vesper. There will be hard days mixed with good ones. Moments where old fears resurface. That's normal. What matters is having people around you who understand that grief and trauma don't have expiration dates. Like you. Like all of us. He gestured to the pack members laughing in my kitchen. Everyone here has survived something. That's why the Northern Kingdom works. We don't judge each other's scars. We just help carry the weight when it gets too heavy. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me check. A text message. One line. You may have won today, but this isn't over. You stole what's mine. My blood went cold. I knew that phrasing, that possessive anger. Stellan. Kieran must have seen my expression change. What is it? Wordlessly, I handed him the phone. His face hardened into something dangerous. When did this come through? Just now. He stood immediately, already pulling out his own phone. Malachi, Vance, we have a situation. The two men were at his side instantly, their casual demeanor replaced by sharp alertness. Kieran showed them the message. Stellan is making threats. We need to increase security around Vesper's house and establish protocols for the children. He can't actually do anything, right? I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. The council ruled. It's a binding pack law. Legally, yes. But laws don't always stop wolves driven by rage and humiliation. Kieran's voice was grim. Stellan just had his authority challenged in front of the entire council. He was publicly stripped of parental rights. That kind of blow to an alpha's ego can make them irrational. You think he'd try to take them by force? I think we don't take chances with your children's safety. He turned to Vance. Double the patrols around this sector. Make sure guards know to report any Moonvale wolves near the border. And get me surveillance footage from the council building. I want to know if Stellan lingered after the hearing or went straight home. On it, Vance said, already moving toward the door. Malachi, coordinate with the school. Make sure they know to only release the children to Vesper or pack members on an approved list. No exceptions, even if someone claims to be family. Understood. The kitchen had gone quiet, celebration replaced by tense awareness that the battle might not be as finished as we'd thought. Talia moved to my side, her hand finding mine.
Hey, breathe.
This is probably just Stellan lashing out. He's too smart to actually violate a council ruling. Is he? Because threatening me via text doesn't seem very smart. It's emotional, not strategic, Gareth said, studying the message on Kieran's phone, which actually works in our favor. If he makes any move against you or the children, he'll be in violation of pack law. The council would strip him of his alpha status entirely. So he's just what? Venting? Most likely. But we prepare for worst-case scenarios anyway. Kieran returned to my side, his presence solid and reassuring. Vesper, I want you and the children to have a security detail. Nothing intrusive, just wolves positioned around your house, monitoring access to the property. That seems excessive. That seems prudent, he corrected firmly. Until we're certain Stellan has accepted the ruling and isn't planning retaliation, we take precautions. Your safety and the children's safety are non-negotiable. I wanted to argue, to insist I could handle this myself. But the text message had shaken me more than I wanted to admit. For a few hours, I'd let myself believe it was truly over. That we could just live, be happy, move forward without looking over our shoulders. Apparently, that had been naive. Okay, I said quietly. Security detail. Whatever you think is necessary. Kieran's expression softened slightly. This is temporary, Vesper. Stellan will realize that threats accomplish nothing. He'll move on, find some other way to salvage his ego. And eventually, this will fade into just another bad memory. You sound very certain. I am. Because I've seen this pattern before. Alphas like Stellan are bullies. They only fight when they think they can win. He's already lost. He's just too angry to accept it yet. The party atmosphere didn't fully recover after that. People began making excuses to leave, early mornings, children to check on, patrols to organize. Within an hour, only Talia and Kieran remained. I can stay the night, Talia offered. Sleep on the couch. Keep you company. I'll be fine. The children need routine, not hovering over adults, making them nervous. Are you sure? I managed a smile. Positive. Go home to your teenagers. Tell them their pseudo-aunt appreciates their welcome baskets. After Talia left, Kieran lingered in the doorway. I'm posting guards, he said. 2 wolves, rotating shifts. They'll stay outside. Perimeter only. You won't even know they're there. Will that make you feel better? Significantly. Then do it. And Kieran? I met his eyes. Thank you. For everything. For winning today. For protecting us after. For seeing us. He moved closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from him, smell pine, and winter on his skin. Vesper, I need you to understand something. His voice was low, intense. What I feel when I look at you, it's not just responsibility or redemption for Celine. It's not just Alpha protecting Omega. My breath caught. Then what is it? Something I'm not entirely sure you're ready to hear yet. His hand came up, almost touching my cheek before dropping back to his side. But when you are ready, when you've had time to heal and find yourself again without the shadow of Stellan hanging over you, ask me again. Before I could respond, he stepped back, the distance returning between us. Lock the doors. Try to sleep. The guards will be in position within the hour. He left, and I stood in my quiet kitchen, heart hammering for reasons that had nothing to do with Stellan's threat and everything to do with the way Kieran looked at me. Like I was precious. Worth protecting. Worth more. Upstairs, I checked on the children one final time. All 5 sleep peacefully, unaware of threats or guards or the complicated feelings stirring in their mother's chest. In my own room, I pulled out the Pack Guardian designation form Kieran had left behind. Designate a pack member as backup guardian, someone you trust most. I stared at the blank line for a long moment. Then I wrote a name in careful letters. Kieran Ashford. Not because he'd asked. Not because of obligation or expectation. But because when I imagined someone loving my children if I couldn't, protecting them, raising them with the same fierce care I would, his was the only name that felt right. Outside, I heard the quiet movement of guards taking position. Inside, my children breathed softly in their dreams. And somewhere in the darkness, an alpha king stood watch over broken wolves learning to be whole again. Tomorrow will bring new challenges. But tonight, we were safe. Tonight, that was enough. Chapter 9. the shadows, and strength. The guards became part of our landscape over the following days, silent sentinels rotating through shifts, visible enough to provide comfort, but discreet enough not to alarm the children. Aloan noticed first, of course. Nothing escaped her ancient-souled observation. "Mama, why are there wolves watching our house?" she asked on the third morning, peering out the kitchen window while I made breakfast. I'd prepared for this question. Because we're important pack members now. Sometimes important people need extra protection. Protection from what? From anything that might try to hurt us. She processed this with the seriousness of someone twice her age. Is our old daddy trying to hurt us? My heart clenched.
No, baby.
He's far away and can't come near us anymore. The guards are just being extra careful. Good. She returned to coloring at the table, apparently satisfied. I didn't like him anyway. He made you cry. The casual way she said it, as if she'd been carrying that observation for a year, made me realize how much my children had witnessed. How much they'd understood even when I'd tried to shield them. I don't cry anymore, I said softly. I know. You smile now instead. She looked up, her blue eyes, mirror of mine, holding wisdom no 6-year-old should possess. Mr. Kieran makes you smile. He makes all of us smile. He's been very kind. He looks at you differently than other people. Aloan. Like you're special. Like Caspin looks at chocolate ice cream. Despite everything, I laughed. That's quite the comparison. It's true, though. She went back to her coloring, adding flowers to what looked like a family portrait, 5 small figures, and 1 large one that could only be Kieran. I think he wants to be part of our family for real. It's complicated, sweetheart.
Why?
We like him. He likes us. That's not complicated. Out of the mouths of children, indeed. The text messages from Stellan continued sporadically. Never threatening enough to constitute violation of pack law, but disturbing nonetheless. You turn my own children against me. The council was biased. Everyone knows Kieran Ashford bought their ruling. This isn't justice. This is theft. Each message was documented, forwarded to Kieran and Gareth, added to a file that grew thicker by the day. He's spiraling, Gareth observed during one of our now regular strategy sessions at my dining room table. The messages are becoming less coherent, more emotional. This is good for us. It establishes a pattern of instability. It doesn't feel good, I said, staring at the latest message. It feels like waiting for a bomb to explode. Which is exactly what he wants, Kieran said firmly. He can't hurt you legally, so he's trying to hurt you psychologically. Make you afraid, keep you off balance, remind you that he still has power. Doesn't he, though? He keeps sending these messages and nothing happens to him. Because they're not illegal.
Disturbing, yes.
Inappropriate, absolutely. But not violations of pack law. Kieran's expression was grim. However, if he escalates, if he tries to contact you directly, comes near your property, or attempts to approach the children, that's different. That's actionable. So, we just wait for him to cross a line? We document everything and stay alert. Eventually, he'll either accept reality or make a mistake we can use against him. It wasn't the reassurance I wanted, but it was honest. And after Stellan's lies, I valued honesty above comfort. Training began on the 5th day after the hearing. Kieran had insisted that rebuilding my wolf connection required more than just pack bond support. It required active work, which meant early morning sessions in a clearing deep in Northern Kingdom territory, just him and me and the forest. Your wolf is damaged but not dead, he explained that first morning, his breath misting in the cold air. The rejection severed pathways, but pathways can be rebuilt. It just takes time and effort. I haven't shifted in 8 months, I admitted. The last time I tried, the pain was so intense I passed out. That's because you were trying to force it. We're going to approach this differently, gently, gradually, letting your wolf remember how to emerge without trauma. He demonstrated by shifting himself, a fluid transformation that made my breath catch. His wolf form was massive, dark-furred and powerful, amber eyes still recognizable even in lupin features. Then he shifted back, barely winded. Your turn. But don't try to fully shift. Just reach for your wolf. See if she'll respond. I closed my eyes and searched inward, down into the place where my wolf should live. For months, there'd been only silence. But now, with the pack bond humming beneath my skin, I felt something stir. A flicker. A whisper. A presence that had been sleeping but wasn't dead. Hello, I thought about her. The response was faint, tentative, like a child who'd been scolded and wasn't sure if it was safe to emerge. It's okay, I assured her. We're safe now. You can come out. My hands began to tingle. Fur rippled beneath skin. Not completing the transformation, but acknowledging the possibility. Then pain lanced through me, sharp and sudden, and I gasped, the connection breaking.
Easy.
Kieran was there immediately, hands on my shoulders, grounding me. That's enough for today. You made contact. That's progress. It hurt. It will for a while. The damaged pathways are like broken bones that healed wrong. They need to be rebroken and reset properly. But each time you reach for her, each time she responds, those pathways get a little stronger. Over the following days, we established a routine. Early mornings in the clearing, just me and Kieran, and the patient work of coaxing my wolf back to life. Some days, I managed only the faintest flicker of response. Other days, I could hold a partial shift for minutes, claws extending, senses sharpening, fur beginning to emerge before the pain forced me back. You're doing better than I expected, Kieran said after a particularly successful session where I'd maintained claws and enhanced hearing for a full 5 minutes. Most wolves with rejection damage this severe never shift again. Is that supposed to be encouraging? It's supposed to be honest. You're defying expectations, Vesper. Again. The training sessions became something I looked forward to, not just for the progress with my wolf, but for the time with Kieran. Away from pack responsibilities and children's needs and the constant awareness of Stellan's lurking threat, we could just be. He told me about building the Northern Kingdom, about the political battles and compromises required to unite 17 packs. I told him about my childhood in a small pack that no longer existed, absorbed by larger territories years ago. Is that why you stayed with Stellan even when things were difficult? Kieran asked one morning. Because you'd already lost one pack?
Partially.
But also because mate bonds are supposed to be forever. I kept thinking if I just tried harder, it was better. He'd see my worth. His failure to see your worth says everything about him and nothing about you. I know that intellectually. Emotionally, I shrugged. I'm working on it. That's all any of us can do. Work on it. Get a little better each day. He shifted topics, telling me about Celine, not just her death, but her life. How she'd loved to paint, how she'd had a laugh that could light up rooms, how she believed in seeing the best in people even when they didn't deserve it. She would have liked you, he said thoughtfully. Would have recognized the same strength in you that she had. The ability to keep going when everything says to quit. I'm not sure I had a choice. There's always a choice. You could have given up. Given the children to the state, to distant relatives, to anyone willing to take them. Many would have, faced with what you faced. They're mine. I could never. Exactly. That's the strength Celine had too. The absolute refusal to abandon those who depended on her, no matter the cost. His voice grew rough. I just wish she'd had someone to help carry the weight before it crushed her. You can't save everyone, Kieran. I know. But I can save the ones in front of me now. His amber eyes held mine. Starting with you. 2 weeks after the hearing, life began to feel almost normal. The children thrived. Eloan excelled in school, coming home daily with stories about friends and lessons and a teacher who actually challenged her bright mind. The twins attended their 4-year-old program with enthusiasm, bringing home art projects that covered our refrigerator. Tobias spoke in full sentences now, his vocabulary expanding as his confidence grew. And Aurelia, my baby, my light, crawled everywhere, exploring her safe world with fearless joy. I started working part-time at the pack daycare, helping Bronte with the younger children. It wasn't much, just a few hours a day while my own children were in school, but it gave me purpose beyond motherhood. Reminded me I had skills, value, worth outside of being someone's rejected mate. The mother's group Fiona had mentioned became a lifeline. Once a week, a dozen pack women gather to talk, vent, and support each other through the challenges of raising children and managing households and navigating pack politics. Your situation was extreme, one woman named Paloma said during my second meeting. But we've all struggled. That's what this group is for, reminding each other we're not alone. They shared stories of difficult births, colicky babies, toddler tantrums, teenage rebellion. Normal problems that felt revolutionary because they weren't about survival. They were just about living. What about you? Another woman asked. Are you and Alpha Kieran? No, I said quickly. He's been incredibly supportive, but it's not like that. But it could be, Fiona observed with grandmother's wisdom. Anyone can see the way he looks at you. He looks at everyone with care. That's who he is.
True.
But he looks at you like you're the last candle in a dark room. She smiled knowingly. Just something to consider. I didn't want to consider it. Considering it meant acknowledging feelings I wasn't ready to name. Meant risking the safety we'd found by wanting more. Meant potentially getting hurt again. The shift happened on a Tuesday. No warning. No build-up. Just Stellan's latest text message, different from all the others. I'm done talking. Actions speak louder than words. You'll understand soon. I forwarded it to Kieran immediately, my hand shaking. His response was instant. Stay home. Lock the doors. I'm sending additional guards. Within 15 minutes, my house was surrounded by wolves. Malachi arrived with Vance, both of them grim-faced and alert. Kieran appeared shortly after, his expression harder than I'd ever seen it. What does it mean? I asked. Actions speak louder than words. It means he's planning something. We just don't know what yet. Kieran pulled out his phone, already coordinating. Gareth, I need eyes on Stellan Cross. Where is he right now? A pause while he listened. Then his face went cold. He's not in Moonvale. He left Pack territory 3 hours ago. Direction unknown. My blood turned to ice. He's coming here. We don't know that for certain. Yes, we do. That message was a warning. He's coming for my children. Kieran's hand found mine, squeezing firmly. Then he'll find an army waiting. Vesper, I promise you, he will not touch your children. Even if he makes it past the border, past the guards, past every defense we have, he'll still have to go through me. And me, Malachi added. And me, Vance echoed. And about 300 other Pack members who've claimed you as family, Kieran finished. Stellan Cross is one wolf. We are Legion. He cannot win this. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. But fear had its claws in deep, whispering that I'd been foolish to think we could ever truly be safe from a rejected mate's rage. The children, I said. Where are they? School is in lockdown. No one in or out without verification. I have 10 guards stationed there, and the principal has instructions to keep all students inside until I give the all clear. This is insane. He's one wolf making threats. Why are we acting like it's a war? Because prevention is always better than response. Kieran's voice was steel-wrapped in determination. I will not risk your children's safety on the assumption that Stellan is bluffing. We prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Hours crawled by with agonizing slowness. Guards reported regularly. Perimeter secure. No signs of Moonvale wolves. Border patrols doubled. Nothing unusual. But the threat lingered, hanging over us like storm clouds that refused to break. Kieran stayed with me, coordinating security from my dining room table while I paced and worried and checked my phone obsessively for updates about the children. They're fine, he assured me for the 100th time. Safe, secure, probably wondering why they can't go outside for recess. I should be there. With them. You should be here, where I can protect you. Because if this is a diversion, if Stellan is trying to draw you out, walking into his trap serves no one. He was right.
I knew he was right.
But maternal instinct screamed to gather my children close, to physically place myself between them and danger. The call came at 4 o'clock. Vance, his voice tight with controlled fury. We have him. Stellan Cross just tried to cross the southern border. He's in custody. Relief flooded through me so intensely my knees buckled. Kieran caught me, holding me steady while he spoke into the phone. Where is he now? Border station. He's demanding to speak with you. Says he has rights under pack law to visit Northern Kingdom territory. He has no rights here whatsoever. Kieran's voice could have frozen fire. Hold him. I'm on my way. He turned to me. Stay here with Malachi. I'll handle this.
No.
I straightened, forcing strength into my spine. I'm coming with you. He came here because of me. I should face him. Vesper. Please. I need to see this through. I need to prove to myself that he can't hurt me anymore. Kieran studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly.
All right.
But we do this my way. You stay behind me. You don't engage unless I say so. And if things escalate, you leave immediately. Understood? Understood. As we climbed into his SUV, surrounded by guards, heading toward a confrontation I'd both dreaded and needed, I realized something fundamental had shifted. I wasn't running anymore. Wasn't hiding or cowering or hoping to be invisible. I was facing my demons with an army at my back and an alpha king at my side. And this time, I wasn't afraid. This time, I was ready. Chapter 10. Confrontation. The border station was a sturdy log building that straddled the line between Northern Kingdom territory and neutral ground. Inside, tension crackled like electricity before a storm. Stellan stood in the center of the main room, flanked by two massive Northern Kingdom guards who looked like they were carved from granite and bad intentions. He was dressed well, expensive jacket, tailored pants, but his face told a different story. Eyes bloodshot, jaw clenched, the kind of barely controlled rage that made even alphas dangerous. When he saw me enter behind Kieran, something feral flashed across his features. Vesper. My name on his lips felt like a violation. Finally. I've been trying to reach you for weeks. You've been harassing her with threatening messages, Kieran corrected, his voice cold as winter. There's a difference. I have a right to speak to the mother of my children. You have no rights where Vesper or her children are concerned. Kieran moved slightly, positioning himself between Stellan and me. The Council of Alphas terminated your parental status. You were explicitly forbidden from contact. The Council was wrong. Biased. You bought their ruling with your influence and money. I presented evidence of your abandonment and neglect. The Council made their decision based on facts, not influence. Stellan's laugh was bitter. Facts? You call her testimony facts? She's a rejected Omega who fled Pack territory without permission, denied me access to my offspring, and poisoned them against me. I didn't poison anyone, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. You did that yourself, by choosing to reject me while I was pregnant, by never providing support, by never even asking if they were alive. His eyes locked on mine, and for a moment I saw the wolf I'd once loved, or thought I'd loved. Before I understood that love didn't come with conditions and expiration dates. I was trying to give you space, he said, and I almost believed he believed it. The rejection was difficult for both of us. I thought time apart would.
What?
Make me disappear? Make the children disappear? Anger rose hot in my chest. You didn't want space, Stellan. You wanted freedom from responsibility. Freedom to start over with Daphne without the inconvenient reminder of the mate you discarded. That's not true. Then why didn't you pay support? Why didn't you call? Why didn't you do literally anything a father should do? Because you left. You ran away without telling me where you were going. I told your beta exactly where I was going. Left my address, my phone number. You chose not to use them. The words hung between us, truth sharp enough to draw blood. Stellan's face flushed red. I'm not here to argue about the past. I'm here because those children are mine, and you have no right to keep them from me. The council disagrees, Kieran interjected, as does pack law, precedent, and basic decency. You lost, Stellan. Accept it and move on. I'll never accept it. Stellan's voice dropped into something dangerous. Those are my children. My blood. My legacy. And I will have them back, one way or another. The threat was clear. Unmistakable. Kieran's posture shifted subtly. Not aggressive yet, but ready. Every inch the Alpha King. Are you threatening to violate a council ruling? I'm stating my intentions. If pack law won't give me justice, I'll find it elsewhere. That sounds like a confession of intent to commit kidnapping, Gareth observed from where he'd been quietly documenting everything. Alpha Cross, you should be aware that this conversation is being recorded and will be submitted to the Council of Alphas as evidence of your unstable mental state and ongoing threat to these children. Stellan's eyes widened, then narrowed with fury. You set me up. This whole thing was a trap. This whole thing was you making threats and following through by illegally attempting to enter our territory, Kieran corrected. We simply documented your choices. I have a right to travel. Not into territories where you've been explicitly banned. The council ruling included a restraining clause preventing you from coming within 50 miles of Vesper or the children without permission. You violated that clause the moment you crossed into our borders. Stellan looked between Kieran and Gareth, understanding finally dawning. You're going to use this to strip my alpha status. No, Kieran said quietly. You're going to do that yourself if you continue down this path. I'm simply giving you a choice. Leave now, accept the ruling, and maintain what dignity and authority you have left. Or continue making threats, continue violating restrictions, and watch everything you've built crumble. That's not a choice. That's extortion. That's the consequences. Something you've avoided for too long. The silence stretched, thick with tension and unspoken violence. Finally, Stellan's gaze found mine again. And this time, I saw something besides rage. I saw desperation. The flailing of a man who'd always gotten his way suddenly faced with immovable boundaries. Vesper, please, he said, and the pleading tone was almost worse than the anger. They're my children. Don't I deserve a chance to know them?
Part of me wanted to say yes.
The part that still remembered loving him, that believed in redemption and second chances. But then I thought about Alohan's fever while I counted pennies for medicine. About the twins building towers from cardboard because I couldn't afford real toys. About Tobias's silence born from stress no 2-year-old should carry. About Aurelia crying from hunger I couldn't immediately satisfy. About a year of suffering while Stellan moved on without consequence. You had a chance, I said, my voice quiet but firm. You had 1,000 chances over 12 months. Every day you could have called, could have helped, could have shown you cared. You chose not to. I was hurt.
So was I.
But I still showed up for them.
Every
single
day.
I took a breath, finding strength I didn't know I possessed. You don't get to demand access to children you abandoned just because you finally realized what you lost. They're not possessions to reclaim when convenient. They're people who've built a life without you, a better life. And I won't let you disrupt that because your ego is bruised. They need a father. They need safety, stability, and love, none of which you've provided. I stepped out from behind Kieran, facing Stellan directly. You rejected me when I was pregnant. You rejected them before they were even born. That was your choice. Now live with it. Something in Stellan's expression cracked, rage giving way to something rawer, more broken. I made a mistake, he said hoarsely. One mistake. Do I have to pay for it forever? You made 1,000 mistakes, I corrected. And yes, some mistakes have permanent consequences. This is one of them. Kieran moved to stand beside me, his presence solid and supportive without overshadowing. Stellan Cross, you have 2 options, he said with alpha authority that resonated through the room. Option 1. Leave Northern Kingdom territory immediately, cease all contact with Vesper and the children, and accept the Council's ruling. Do this, and we'll present today's incident as a momentary lapse in judgment due to emotional distress. The Council will issue a warning, but take no further action. He paused, letting the alternative hang unspoken for a moment. Option 2. Continue your campaign of harassment and threats. Force us to bring additional charges before the Council. In which case, we'll present every message, every violation, every piece of evidence showing you're a danger to these children. The Council will not only uphold the termination of your rights, They'll strip your alpha status and potentially exile you from all pack territories. That's absurd. They can't. They absolutely can. Alphas who threaten children, who violate council rulings, who demonstrate the kind of instability you've shown, they're considered dangers to pack structure itself. Kieran's voice was steel. Test me on this if you want. But know that I will not hesitate to pursue every legal avenue to protect Vesper and those children from you. The fight seemed to drain from Stellan all at once. His shoulders sagged, his jaw unclenched, and suddenly he looked less like a dangerous alpha and more like a man who'd bet everything on a losing hand. How did it come to this? He asked, and I wasn't sure if he was talking to me or himself. We were supposed to build a life together, have a family, be happy. We could have, I said softly, if you'd chosen differently, if you'd valued what we had instead of chasing something shinier. But you didn't. And now we're here. I loved you. His voice broke slightly. I did. Just not enough, I finished. Not enough to stay when things got difficult. Not enough to choose us over your ambitions. And definitely not enough to put our children's needs above your own comfort. He flinched like I'd struck him. So what now? I just disappear from their lives forever? You already did that, I pointed out. This just makes it official. Gareth stepped forward, holding out documents. These are termination papers with the updated restrictions. Sign them, and you're free to return to Moonvale with no further consequences. Refuse, and we proceed with charges. Stellan stared at the papers like they were a death sentence. In a way, they were the death of whatever fantasy he'd been nurturing about reclaiming his children, his authority, his control. If I sign, you forfeit all parental rights permanently, Gareth said. You cannot contest the ruling, cannot petition for visitation, cannot make any claims to the children now or in the future. They will be legally and permanently Vesper's alone. And if they want to find me someday, when they're older, I considered the question. If they choose to seek you out as adults, that's their decision. But it has to come from them freely, without pressure or manipulation. And not until they're old enough to make that choice themselves. It was more generous than he deserved. But I wouldn't let his mistakes poison my children's potential futures. If they someday wanted answers, wanted to understand their origins, that was their right. But it would be on their terms, not his. Stellan took the pen Gareth offered with shaking hands. For a long moment, he just stared at the signature line. I really did love you, he said again, looking at me with something like regret. I hope you know that. I know you thought you did. But love isn't just a feeling, Stellan. It's action. It's showing up when things are hard. It's sacrifice and commitment and choosing your people even when it costs you something. I thought about Kieran, about the pack, about everyone who'd surrounded us with support and protection. You taught me what love isn't. And they've been teaching me what it is. He signed the papers with jerky, reluctant movements. Each stroke of the pen severing another tie, another claim, another piece of the future he'd imagined. When he finished, Gareth collected the documents efficiently. These will be filed with the council by the end of day. You're free to go, Alpha Cross. But understand, any further contact with Vesper or the children will be considered harassment and prosecuted accordingly. Stellan stood slowly, looking diminished somehow. Less. As if signing away his children had cost him more than just legal rights, it had cost him some fundamental piece of himself. Good, I thought with fierce satisfaction. Let him feel what loss tastes like. Let him carry that weight the way I've carried it. He moved toward the door, then paused. Tell the children I'm sorry. That I was weak when I should have been strong. That they deserved better than me. I'll tell them the truth, I said. That you made choices you can't take back. What they do with that information is up to them. He nodded once, then left, escorted by guards who would make sure he actually crossed the border and didn't linger. The moment he was gone, my knees buckled. Kieran caught me immediately, pulling me against his chest while I shook with reaction and relief and a complicated grief for what might have been if Stellan had been different. It's over, Kieran murmured against my hair. Truly over this time. He can't hurt you anymore. Why don't I feel triumphant? Why do I just feel empty? Because ending things, even things that needed to end, still hurts. But Vesper, you were incredible. Strong and clear and absolutely in control. He pulled back enough to meet my eyes. You faced him without fear. Spoke your truth without apology. That's not empty. That's powerful. Maybe he was right. Maybe this hollowness was just the space where fear used to live, not yet filled with whatever came next. Can we get the children now? I asked. I need to see them. Touch them. Make sure they're real and safe and mine. Already arranged. Malachi is bringing them here. I thought you'd want them close after this. Of course he'd thought of that. Kieran thought of everything. The children arrived in a flurry of questions and energy, apparently having enjoyed their special lockdown day with extra snacks and movies. Mama, Eloan launched herself at me. We had pizza for lunch. And Mr. Malachi taught us a song about wolves. I gathered her close, then opened my arms for the twins, for Tobias, for Aurelia, who Talia carried in. My 5 lights. My 5 reasons for everything. We're going home, I told them. And we're never leaving again. Promise? Caspin asked. Promise. As we drove back to our house, surrounded by guards, followed by Kieran's vehicle, protected by an entire pack that had claimed us, I finally let myself believe it. We were safe. We were home. We were free. And whatever came next, we'd face it together. Chapter 11. Learning to Thrive. 3 months after Stellan signed away his rights, winter settled over the northern kingdom like a blessing. Snow transformed the landscape into something from a storybook, trees heavy with white, icicles glinting like crystals in the sunlight, the whole world hushed and magical. The children had never seen real snow before. Our year in the human city had been all rain and gray concrete. But here, they discovered the joy of snowball fights and snow angels and sleds that went faster than seemed safe, but somehow always were. Mama, look! Linnea shrieked, catching snowflakes on her tongue while Caspian tried to build what he insisted was a dragon but looked more like a lumpy pile of snow with sticks. Eloan had organized the neighborhood children into teams for an elaborate snow fort competition. At 7 now, her birthday had passed quietly but joyfully last month. She'd grown into her role as eldest with more confidence, less burden. She was allowed to be a child who sometimes took charge, rather than a child forced to be an adult. Tobias talked constantly now, his silence replaced by endless questions about everything. Why is snow cold? Where does it come from?
Can wolves eat it?
What if I eat too much? And Aurelia, at 15 months, toddled through shallow drifts with determination, falling and getting back up and squealing with delight every single time. I watched them from the porch, wrapped in a blanket Talia had made, drinking hot chocolate that actually tasted like luxury rather than a fantasy I couldn't afford. You're smiling again, Kieran observed, climbing the porch steps with his own mug. He'd been helping the children build their snow creations, his dark hair dusted with white, his eyes bright with something that looked like contentment. I do that a lot now.
Good.
It suits you. He settled beside me on the porch swing, close enough that I could feel his warmth through the cold air. Over the past 3 months, Kieran had become, I wasn't sure what to call it, more than alpha, more than friends, not quite mate. I wasn't ready for that, might never be ready for that level of vulnerability again. But something. Someone who showed up for dinner most evenings, who helped with homework and bedtime stories, who fixed things around the house without being asked, who made the children laugh and made me feel seen, and made our house feel like a home rather than just a shelter. Malachi is teaching Eloan to track tomorrow, he said, sipping his chocolate. She's been asking about it for weeks. She wants to be a warrior like you. She wants to be strong like her mother, he corrected. The warrior part is just how she's choosing to express it. My training sessions with Kieran had continued, growing more intense as my wolf gradually healed. I could hold a partial shift for nearly an hour now, claws, enhanced senses, even the beginning of fur. Full transformation was still beyond me, might always be, but I was stronger than I'd been in years. I never thought I'd feel this way again, I admitted quietly. Safe enough to plan for tomorrow instead of just surviving today. What does tomorrow look like for you? I considered the question. I want to take more hours at the daycare. Bronte mentioned they're expanding, need another full-time coordinator. I think I could be good at that. You'd be excellent at it. You understand what struggling parents need because you've lived it. What about you? What does tomorrow look like for an alpha king? Kieran was quiet for a moment, watching the children play. Honestly, for the first time in years, I can see a future that isn't just duty and responsibility. One that includes personal happiness. Something in his tone made my heart skip. Kieran, Mama. Tobias came running up, snow covering him head to toe. Caspian says I can't be a dragon too, but I wanted to be a dragon. You can both be dragons, I assured him. Dragons come in all sizes.
See.
He ran back to his brother, vindicated. Kieran chuckled. Crisis averted. For now, give them 5 minutes. We sat in comfortable silence, watching winter and childhood and normalcy unfold in the yard. The pack gathering is next week, Kieran said eventually. The winter solstice celebration. It's one of our biggest events, food, music, dancing, the whole pack comes together. The children have been talking about it nonstop. Apparently, there's a gift exchange. Among other traditions. He hesitated. It's also when pack members sometimes announce new bonds. Matings, partnerships, family formations. My breath caught.
Oh.
I'm not suggesting, he stopped, seeming to gather himself. I just wanted you to be aware. In case you see couples making announcements and wonder about protocol.
Right.
Protocol. Another silence, this one less comfortable. Vesper, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you happy? Here, with the pack, with how things have settled?
Yes.
Genuinely, completely yes.
Why?
He turned to face me more fully. Because I need to know if you're staying because it's safe, or because it's home. If you're here out of gratitude and necessity, or because you actually want to be here. The vulnerability in his voice, this powerful alpha asking if I wanted to stay, made my chest tight. It's home, I said firmly. It stopped being safe weeks ago. This is where we belong, Kieran. Where I belong. Relief flickered across his features.
Good.
That's good. Why does it matter? Because he stopped as all 5 children came running up at once, Eloan in the lead. Mr. Kieran, Caspian says snow dragons breathe ice instead of fire, and I say that's not a dragon, that's just a cold lizard. Who's right? Kieran's lips twitched. I think both dragons and cold lizards can be equally magnificent. That's not an answer. It's a diplomatic answer, he corrected, standing. Now, who wants to help me build a snow fortress big enough to defend against both dragons and cold lizards? The children cheered and dragged him back into the yard, and the moment, whatever he'd been about to say, was lost. But I found myself wondering about it for the rest of the day. The daycare expansion happened faster than I expected. Bronte called me into her office one afternoon and simply said, "The job's yours if you want it. Full-time coordinator, benefits, salary that'll let you stop worrying about money for the first time in 2 years." I'd stared at her, certain I'd misheard. Just like that.
Just like that.
You're good with the children, good with the parents, and you understand what it's like to need support. That's exactly who we need running this program. But I don't have formal training. You have lived experience, natural talent, and 3 months of proving you're perfect for this role. She smiled. Take the job, Vesper. Let yourself succeed. So I did. And suddenly I had a career, not just a way to fill hours between parenting. Had colleagues who valued my input, challenges that engaged my mind, purpose beyond survival. I'm proud of you, Talia said when I told her over coffee. Watching you rebuild your life has been incredible. I couldn't have done it without all of you. Maybe. But you did the actual work. We just provided the safety net. The mothers group had become my anchor. Every week, the same dozen women gathered to share burdens and victories. They'd celebrated when I got the daycare job, commiserated when Tobias went through a phase of nightmares, offered advice when Eloan struggled with a bully at school. This is what I missed most in Moonvale, I admitted one evening. Female friendship. Support that didn't come with judgment. Alpha Cross really isolated you, Fiona observed. He didn't have to try hard. Once I was rejected, people avoided me naturally. Like rejection was contagious. That's not a pack, Paloma said firmly. That's cowardice dressed up as tradition. Well, I'm grateful Kieran built something different here. Speaking of Kieran, another woman said with a knowing smile, you two have been spending a lot of time together. He's been helping with the children. He looks at you like you hung the moon, Fiona interrupted. And you look at him like you're afraid to reach for it.
Did I?
Was it that obvious? I'm not ready, I said quietly. Maybe I'll never be ready. The bond with Stellan broke something in me. Or maybe it broke you open, Talia suggested gently. Made space for something real instead of something biological. I don't know the difference anymore. That's okay. You don't have to. Just don't close yourself off to the possibility of happiness because you're afraid of being hurt again. Their words haunted me for days. The wolf reawakening happened unexpectedly during a training session 2 weeks before the solstice. Kieran and I were in our usual clearing, working on holding partial transformation while moving. I'd managed to maintain claws and enhanced hearing while walking circuits around the perimeter. Good, Kieran encouraged. Now try running. I broke into a jog, feeling the familiar tingle of power beneath my skin. My wolf rose to meet it, stronger than she'd been, more present. And then something shifted. The transformation I'd been holding partially suddenly surged forward, overwhelming my control. Bones began to crack and reform. Fur erupted across my skin. My perspective shifted as my body reshaped itself. Pain, sharp and intense, but different from before. Not the agony of damaged pathways, but the discomfort of muscles remembering movements they'd forgotten. And then I was standing on 4 legs instead of 2, looking up at Kieran through wolf eyes. I'd shifted. Fully shifted. For the first time in over a year. Vesper? Kieran's voice in my mind, the pack bond allowing alpha to member communication. Can you hear me? Yes, I thought back, testing the mental connection. I shifted. I actually shifted. You did. Even mentally. I could hear the pride in his voice. How do you feel? I took inventory. My wolf form was smaller than it had been before rejection. The damage had left permanent marks. But I was whole, present, connected to my animal self in ways I'd thought lost forever. Alive, I answered. I feel alive. Run with me? He shifted in one fluid motion, his massive dark wolf appearing beside my smaller tawny form. And we ran. Through the forest, over fallen logs, between ancient trees, the pack bond humming between us like a second heartbeat. My wolf, damaged but not broken, diminished but not defeated, stretched muscles and tested limits and discovered she could still move, still hunt, still exist. When we finally stopped, both of us panting, Kieran shifted back first. I followed, the transformation reversing more smoothly than I expected, and found myself kneeling in the snow, naked and shaking and crying. Kieran wrapped his coat around me immediately, pulling me against his chest. You did it, he murmured. Your wolf came back. She never really left, I realized, voice thick with emotion. She was just hiding, waiting until it was safe. And now it is. You're safe, Vesper. Safe enough to be whole again. I clung to him, this alpha who'd given me space to heal and strength to grow and patience while I found my way back to myself. Thank you, I whispered, for not giving up on me, on us. Never. His arms tightened around me. I will never give up on you. We stayed like that for a long moment, wrapped in winter and pack bond, and something deeper I still wasn't ready to name. But maybe Talia was right. Maybe I was afraid to reach for the moon. Maybe it was time to stop being afraid. The week before the solstice celebration, Aloan asked the question I'd been dreading. Mama, why don't we have a dad like the other kids? We were decorating cookies, a pack tradition involving more frosting than any baked good should reasonably hold. The twins were creating abstract art with sprinkles. Tobias was systematically eating every third cookie. Aurelia was more frosting than a child. But Eloan, my serious eldest, had that look that meant real questions were coming. You had a dad, I said carefully. But he made choices that meant he couldn't be part of our family anymore. I know about the rejection. We all know. She arranged silver sprinkles with precision. But Emma at school has two moms because her dad died and her mom found a new mate. And Jacob has a stepdad who he says is better than his real dad ever was. Where are you going with this, sweetheart? She looked up at me with eyes too knowing for 7 years. Is Mr. Kieran going to be our dad? Like, officially? All the other children stopped their cookie destruction and stared at me. Mr. Kieran is. I fumbled for words. He's been very good to us. He loves you, Eloan said matter-of-factly. And you love him. I can tell. Eloan. It's okay if you do, Mama. We all like him. He's nice, and he makes you smile, and he doesn't make you cry like our old dad did. I like him too, Caspin added. He knows everything about dragons. He reads good bedtime stories, Tobias contributed. He fixes things, Linnea said. And bring ice cream. Even Aurelia babbled something that might have been an agreement, or might have been a request for more frosting. I looked at my 5 children, these impossible blessings who'd survived rejection and poverty and instability, all looking at me with hope in their eyes. Would you want Mr. Kieran to be part of our family? I asked carefully. Officially? Yes, they chorused in unison. But Mama, Eloan said seriously, only if it makes you happy too. We don't need a dad. We have you. But if you want him, we want you to have him. Out of the mouths of children. That night, after the kids were asleep and the kitchen was cleaned and the house was quiet, I sat with a pack guardian designation form I'd filled out months ago. Kieran's name in careful letters. And I thought about what Talia had said about being afraid to reach for the moon, about what my children had said, about wanting me to be happy, about what Kieran had asked if I was staying because it was safe or because it was home. Maybe it was time to find out if home could also include happiness. Maybe it was time to stop being afraid of wanting more. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to reach. Chapter 12. Winter Solstice. The Northern Kingdom transformed for the winter solstice celebration. The central pavilion where I'd been bonded to the pack 3 months ago was now draped in evergreen boughs and white lights that looked like captured stars. Long tables groaned under the weight of food, roasted meats, fresh bread, winter vegetables glazed with honey, desserts that made the children's eyes go wide. A bonfire blazed in the center, its flames reaching toward the darkening sky. Around it, pack members gathered in their finest clothes, laughing and talking and celebrating the longest night of the year. You look beautiful, Talia said, adjusting the deep green dress she'd insisted I borrow. That color makes your eyes glow. I feel ridiculous. I haven't dressed up in years. Well, you should. You deserve to feel beautiful. The children were already racing around with their friends, Eloan leading an expedition to find the best view of the bonfire. The twins had discovered a dessert table and were plotting strategy. Tobias was shyly talking to another boy his age. And Aurelia was being passed around by pack members who cooed over her like she was everyone's baby. My heart felt too full for my chest. There he is, Talia murmured, nodding toward the pavilion entrance. Kieran had just arrived, dressed in dark formal attire that made him look every inch the Alpha King. But when his eyes found mine across the crowd, all that power and authority softened into something warmer. He crossed to us, navigating pack members with easy grace. Vesper, you look. He seemed to be at a loss for words, which was unusual for him. Stunning. You clean up pretty well yourself. I will try. His eyes held mine for a moment longer than strictly necessary. May I steal you for a moment? There's something I'd like to show you before the festivities begin. I glanced at Talia, who was trying not to smirk.
Go.
I'll watch the children. Take your time. Kieran offered his arm, and I took it, letting him guide me away from the pavilion and down a path lit by lanterns. Where are we going? You'll see. The path wound through snow-covered trees until we reached a small clearing I'd never seen before. In the center stood an ancient oak, its bare branches reaching toward the stars. Around its base, Candles flickered in glass holders, creating a circle of light. "This is the heart tree," Kieran said quietly. "The oldest living thing in the Northern Kingdom. It's said that bonds formed here are blessed by the forest itself." My breath caught. "Kieran, let me say this before I lose my nerve." He turned to face me fully, taking both my hands in his. "3 months ago, I offered you sanctuary because it was the right thing to do. Because of Celine. Because pack law demands better. I know. But somewhere between feeding your children takeout and watching you fight for them in front of the council, between training sessions and bedtime stories and 1,000 small moments, it became about more than duty." His amber eyes reflected candlelight and something deeper. "It became about you. About who you are when you're not just surviving. About the strength you've always had but are finally able to show. About watching you bloom into the person you were meant to be before rejection tried to convince you that you were less." "Kieran, I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give," he continued quickly. "I know the mate bond with Stellan damaged you. I know trusting another alpha feels impossible. But Vesper, I need you to know that what I feel isn't obligation or redemption or alpha protecting Omega." He squeezed my hands gently. "It's love. Pure and simple and inconvenient and completely certain. I love you. I love your children. I love the family you've built from impossible circumstances. And if you'll have me, not because it's safe or convenient or what the pack expects, but because you want me, I would be honored to stand beside you. Officially. Permanently." My heart hammered so hard I was certain he could hear it. "What?" I whispered. "Mate? Partner? Guardian? As whatever you're comfortable with. If you want a chosen mate bond, we can do that. If you just want a partnership without supernatural ties, that works too. If you need more time, years even, I'll wait." He brought my hands to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to my knuckles. "I'm not Stellan, Vesper. I won't demand more than you can give. Won't make you prove your worth. Won't threaten to leave when things get difficult. I'm in this. In you. In us, for as long as you'll have me." Tears spilled down my cheeks, but they weren't sad tears. They were the tears of someone who'd stopped believing in happy endings suddenly being offered one. "I'm afraid," I admitted. "Afraid of trusting again. Afraid of letting someone close enough to hurt me. Afraid that if I reach for happiness, it'll be ripped away." "That's reasonable. Fear doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. Wolf. You know what I mean." I laughed through the tears. "The children asked me today if you were going to be their dad. Officially." Surprise flickered across his face. "What did you tell them?" "That I'd think about it. And I have been thinking about it. For weeks, if I'm honest. Trying to figure out what I feel versus what I'm afraid to feel." I took a shaky breath. "You said you'd wait years if necessary. But Kieran, I don't want to wait years. I don't want to let fear dictate my life anymore. Stellan taught me what love isn't. You've been teaching me what it is." Hope kindled in his eyes, bright and fragile. "Every day you show up. Every bedtime story you read. Every tear you wipe. Every moment you prove that alphas can be gentle and strong and worthy of trust. You've been healing wounds I didn't know could heal." I stepped closer, until we were nearly touching. "I love you too. It terrifies me, but I love you. Your patience and your strength and the way you see me, really see me, not just what rejection made me. And if you're serious about this, about us, about being part of our family, more serious than I've ever been about anything, then yes, to whatever form it takes. Chosen mate bond, partnership, co-parenting arrangement, I don't care about the label. I just want you. In our lives. Officially. Permanently." The smile that broke across Kieran's face was like sunrise after the longest night. "You're sure? Because once we do this, I'm not going anywhere. You'll be stuck with an alpha king who makes terrible dad jokes and spoils children and is absolutely shameless about claiming you as his." "I'm counting on it." He cupped my face in his hands, thumbs brushing away my tears. "May I kiss you?" "I'd be offended if you didn't." The kiss was nothing like I remembered with Stellan. There was no supernatural compulsion, no mate bond forcing artificial chemistry. Just genuine attraction and hard-won trust, and the choice to be vulnerable with someone who'd proven worthy of that vulnerability. When we finally pulled apart, both breathless, Kieran rested his forehead against mine. "I promise you," he said quietly, "I will spend every day proving this was the right choice. That I'm worth the risk you're taking. You already have. This is just making it official." Speaking of officials, he pulled a small box from his pocket. "I wasn't sure if you'd say yes, but I hoped." Inside was a ring, simple silver with a stone that caught the candlelight and threw it back in rainbow colors. "It's not traditional," he said. "No diamonds or gold. But the stone is moonstone. It's said to represent new beginnings and inner strength. I thought it was appropriate. It's perfect." He slipped it onto my finger, and I felt something settle into place. Not a mate bond. Those required ritual and pack witnesses. But something just as powerful. A chosen commitment. A partnership built on respect and trust and genuine affection. "Should we tell the pack?" I asked. "That's what the solstice celebration is for. Announcements of new bonds. If you're ready." "I'm ready." We walked back to the pavilion hand in hand, and I felt different somehow. Lighter. Like I'd been carrying a weight I didn't recognize until it was gone. The celebration was in full swing, children running wild with supervised chaos, adults gathered in conversation clusters, food being devoured with enthusiasm, music starting up as pack members pulled out instruments. Kieran led me to the center, near the bonfire, and the pack gradually quieted, sensing something significant was about to happen. "Northern Kingdom," Kieran's voice carried across the space with alpha authority. "Tonight we celebrate the longest night and the promise of returning light. We honor tradition and look toward the future. And I have an announcement." He squeezed my hand, and I felt a pack of eyes on us. Curious, knowing, supportive. 3 months ago, I offered Vesper Thorne and her children's sanctuary. Today, I ask them to be more than pack members under my protection. I ask them to be family. He turned to face me fully. "Vesper has agreed to form a chosen bond with me. Not because of obligation or necessity, but because we've found something worth building together. A partnership. A family. A future." The pack erupted in cheers and howls. Talia was crying openly. Malachi grinned like he'd won a bet. Even serious Gareth looked pleased. My children pushed through the crowd, Aloan in the lead. "Does this mean yes?" she asked, looking between us. "It means yes," I confirmed. "Yes." All 5 of them dogpiled us, and suddenly Kieran and I were buried under excited children who thought this was the best news ever. "Does this mean Mr. Kieran is our dad now?" Tobias asked. "If you want me to be," Kieran said, somehow managing to hold all of them at once. "I would be honored. Can we call you Dad?" Caspin asked. "You can call me whatever feels right. Dad, Kieran, Mr. Kieran. I answer to anything as long as it comes from you." "I'm calling you Dad," Aloan decided. "Because you do dad things. Like fix stuff and read stories and protect Mama. And bring ice cream," Linnea added. "That too." The pack surrounded us with congratulations and well wishes. Apparently, according to several amused pack members, they'd all seen this coming months ago. "You two were so obvious," Talia said, hugging me fiercely. "I'm so happy for you."
For all of you. Me too.
I didn't think I could feel this way again. That's the thing about healing. It makes room for joy you thought was lost forever. Later that night, after the celebration had wound down and the children had finally crashed from sugar and excitement, Kieran and I stood on my porch, our porch now, watching the stars. "Are you going to move in?" I asked. "Or do we do some kind of gradual transition? Whatever makes the children most comfortable. We can take it slow, let them adjust to the idea before I'm a permanent fixture." "They already consider you a permanent fixture. You might as well make it official. Then I'll move in whenever you're ready." I leaned against him, fitting perfectly under his arm. "I can't believe this is real. That I get to have this, you, safety, happiness, a future that doesn't involve constantly calculating survival odds." "Believe it. Because I'm not going anywhere, Vesper. This is real. We're real. and we get to keep it. Inside, one of the children called out nightmare or need for water or just checking that we were still there. I'll get it, Kieran said automatically, already moving toward the door. I watched him go. This alpha king who'd chosen us, who'd seen broken wolves and decided we were worth saving, who'd proven that love could be built on respect and patience and showing up every single day. And I thought about how far we'd come. From a rejected Omega facing eviction with 5 hungry children, to this, a family, a home, a partner who saw my strength instead of my scars. The moon hung bright above, illuminating snow-covered trees and a world that suddenly felt full of possibility. I wasn't afraid of reaching for happiness anymore, because I'd already caught it. And this time I was never letting go. Chapter 13. Building Tomorrow. Spring arrived like a promise kept. Snow melted into streams that sang through the forest. Trees budded with new growth. Flowers pushed through thawing earth, determined and colorful and alive. The Northern Kingdom shed its winter coat and bloomed, and I felt like I was blooming with it. Kieran had moved in gradually over the winter months. First a drawer of clothes, then his work files that seemed to multiply, then furniture that made the house feel more complete, until one day I realized he'd been living with us for weeks, and it felt entirely natural. The children had adapted with the resilience only children possess. They'd started calling him Dad within a week of the solstice announcement, as if they'd just been waiting for permission. Dad, can you help me with my homework? Became as common as, Mama, I'm hungry. Dad, watch this, preceded every new skill or trick or accomplishment. Dad, tell the story about the dragon again was the nightly bedtime request. And Kieran handled all of it with patience and genuine joy that still sometimes surprised me. He wasn't just tolerating fatherhood, he was thriving in it. I never thought I'd have this, he admitted one evening after we'd finally gotten all 5 children to sleep. A family. Children who trust me. A partner who sees me as more than just Alpha King. You deserve it. You've built something incredible here. This whole kingdom is proof of what you can create when you actually care about people. We built it, he corrected. You and the children, the pack, everyone who believed we could be better than traditional hierarchy and abandonment. He pulled me closer on the couch, and I settled against his chest with the ease of months of practice. Have you thought about the formal bonding ceremony? He asked quietly. We'd been avoiding the topic, both of us content with our chosen partnership, but aware that pack tradition expected something more official. I've thought about it, I admitted. The bond with Stellan was so painful when it severed. I'm afraid of creating another supernatural tie that could break. What if it was different? Not a traditional mate bond, but a chosen bond? Some packs have ceremonies for partnerships that don't rely on biological imperative, just commitment and choice. Is that a thing? It can be. We make the rules here, remember? If you want a ceremony that honors what we've built without forcing a supernatural connection you're not ready for, we can create that. I turned to look up at him. You do that? Forgo the mate bond entirely. Vesper, I already have everything I need. You, the children, this life we're building. A mate bond would be nice, but it's not necessary. What matters is that you feel secure and happy and never forced into something you're not ready for. This man, this impossible, patient, wonderful man who kept proving that love could be gentle and respectful and utterly without demands. What if I wanted both? I asked slowly. The chosen ceremony now and maybe, someday, when I'm ready, the mate bond? Then we'd do exactly that. Whatever timeline works for you. You're too good to be real. I'm extremely real. And I'm staying that way. The daycare expansion was complete by late spring, and my new role as full-time coordinator kept me busier than I'd been in years. But it was good. Purposefully busy. The kind where I came home tired but satisfied, with stories to share and challenges I'd solved, and the knowledge that I was making a difference. 3 new families enrolled this week. I told Kieran over dinner. A chaotic affair with 5 children talking over each other and food ending up in creative locations. All of them were single parents who were struggling to afford care. Being able to offer them sliding scale fees, flexible hours, it's what I needed but never had. You're building what you wish had existed for you, Eloan observed with that too-knowing wisdom of hers. That's good leadership. When did you become so wise? I've always been wise. You're just noticing now that you're not constantly stressed. Out of the mouths of children. The mothers group had grown too, absorbing new members as word spread about the Northern Kingdom's approach to supporting struggling wolves. We'd started meeting twice a week, with evening sessions for those who work days. You've created something special, Fiona said after one particularly emotional session where a newly arrived rejected Omega had broken down with relief at finding acceptance. A safe space for women to be honest about their struggles, without judgment. That's what I needed. Still needed, honestly. We all do. That's why this works. My friendship with Talia had deepened into something that felt like sisterhood. She was the first person I called with good news or problems. The one who showed up with wine when I needed to vent or coffee when I needed motivation. Remember when you first arrived? She said one afternoon while we watched our combined children play in the backyard. You were so tense, so ready to bolt at the first sign of threat. I was terrified of everything. And now look at you, running a daycare program, in a committed partnership, planning a bonding ceremony, training other wolves who've experienced rejection trauma. You've become what you needed. We all do, eventually, if we survive long enough. Heavy thoughts for such a beautiful day.
Sorry.
Sometimes I still can't believe this is real. That I get to keep it. It's real. And you get to keep it. Stop waiting for the other shoe to drop, Vesper. There is no other shoe. My wolf training had progressed to the point where full shifts were routine. I'd never have the power I might have possessed without rejection damage, but I was functional. Strong enough to defend myself and the children if necessary. Capable of running with the pack during full moon hunts. You've come so far, Kieran said after one particularly successful training session where I'd tracked him through the forest for over an hour. From barely able to hold a partial shift to this. I had a good teacher. You had determination. I just provided structure and encouragement. We'd started training other damaged wolves too, Omegas who'd been rejected and told they'd never shift again. Showing them that healing was possible, that pack bonds could support what biological bonds destroyed. It became something of a mission for both of us. Kieran used his influence to push for pack law reforms that would make rejection consequences more severe. I worked directly with survivors, helping them rebuild what had been broken. We're changing things, he said one evening, reviewing proposed legislation that would require alphas who rejected pregnant mates to provide mandatory support or face loss of status. Slowly but actually changing them. Stellan would hate this.
Good.
Let him. He's lost his power to hurt anyone, might as well use his mistakes to prevent others from following his example. Stellan had faded into background noise over the months. Occasional updates from Moonvale territory suggested he'd married Daphne in a quiet ceremony, produced an heir, settled into the life he'd wanted. No more threatening messages. No attempts at contact. Just nothing. Which was exactly what he deserved to be to us. Nothing. Eloan's 8th birthday fell on a perfect spring day, and we celebrated with half the pack in our backyard. She'd requested a tracking party, where all the children learned basic tracking skills through games and challenges. Kieran and Malachi ran the activities with enthusiasm that made me fall in love with them both a little more. Your daughter is naturally gifted, Malachi told me, watching Eloan successfully track a missing toy through complex terrain. She has instincts most adult wolves would envy. She's always been observant. Too observant sometimes. That's not a flaw. That's a strength she'll use to protect herself and others. The twins had started showing distinct personalities beyond their twin bond. Caspian was the dreamer, always building elaborate fantasy worlds. Linnea was the pragmatist, keeping her brother grounded while supporting his creativity. Tobias had become the family comedian, discovering he could make people laugh and using that power liberally. His earlier silence felt like a distant memory. And Aurelia, now 18 months old, was pure chaos wrapped in blonde curls. Fearless, determined, convinced she could do everything her older siblings did despite being a fraction of their size. She's going to be trouble, Kieran observed, watching her attempt to climb a tree that was definitely too tall for her. She's going to be spectacular, I corrected. Just like her siblings. Just like her mother. He pulled me close, pressing a kiss to my temple, and I felt the weight of pack bonds humming between us. Not just the one that tied me to the Northern Kingdom, but the deeper one forming between us, built on trust and time and choosing each other every single day. I've been thinking about the ceremony, I said quietly. Oh, I want to do it.
Soon.
Before I lose my nerve. He pulled back to look at me. You're sure? There's no rush. I'm sure. I love you. I trust you. I want to make it official in front of the pack. Show my children that commitment can be beautiful when it's built on the right foundation. When? Summer solstice? It's 3 months away. Enough time to plan, but not so long I overthink myself out of it. His smile could have lit the entire kingdom. Summer solstice it is. Planning the bonding ceremony became a pack-wide project. Talia insisted on handling decorations. Bronte coordinated the feast. Malachi and Vance planned security, because even at celebrations, Alpha Kings needed protection. Gareth managed the legal documentation that would make our partnership official in pack law. And the children? They appointed themselves junior planners, with opinions on everything from flowers to food to whether there should be dancing. There has to be dancing, Eloan insisted during one particularly heated planning session. All good ceremonies have dancing. And cake, Caspin added. Lots of cake. Ice cream cake, Linnea specified. Can we wear fancy clothes? Tobias asked. Aurelia just banged her spoon on the table and shouted party, which we took as enthusiastic agreement. Your children have very specific requirements, Kieran observed, amused. Our children, I corrected. You're stuck with them now. Best decision I ever made. The pack rallied with the same enthusiasm they'd shown for everything involving us. Women from the mothers group offered to make my dress. Teenagers volunteered to watch younger children during the ceremony. Elder pack members shared traditional blessings and rituals that could be adapted for a chosen bond. You're loved here, Fiona said during a fitting for the dress they were creating. By everyone. You know that, right? I'm starting to believe it.
Good.
Because we claimed you as ours months ago. This ceremony just makes it official in another way. One evening, about a month before the ceremony, I found Kieran in his office, our office now, staring at old photographs. What are you looking at? Pictures of Celine. I was thinking about how much she would have loved you. I loved the children. Loved seeing what we built here. I moved behind him, wrapping my arms around his shoulders. Tell me about her. Not just her death, her life.
So he did.
Stories of a sister who painted murals on barn walls and rescued injured animals and believed everyone deserved kindness. Who'd fallen in love with a wolf who didn't deserve her and paid the ultimate price for his rejection. I think she'd be proud of you, I said when he finished. Of everything you've built. Of the laws you're changing. Of the wolves you're saving. I hope so. Though I think she'd mostly be proud that I finally let myself be happy instead of drowning in guilt and duty. Are you? Happy. He turned in his chair, pulling me onto his lap. Deliriously. Unexpectedly. Completely. You and the children. You've given me something I didn't know I needed. A reason to come home isn't just responsibility. We need you too. Not just as a protector or provider, but as a partner. As a father. As the person who sees us and chooses us anyway. Always. I'll always choose you. The night before the ceremony, I couldn't sleep. Not from fear. I'd moved past that. But from anticipation.
Excitement.
The knowledge that tomorrow would mark a new beginning, another chapter in a story that kept getting better. I found Kieran in the kitchen, apparently having the same sleepless experience. Nervous, he asked, pouring me tea.
No.
Just aware that tomorrow changes things. Make permanent what we've been building. Does that scare you? I considered it.
No.
It feels right. Like everything that happened before, the rejection, the struggling, the barely surviving, it was leading to this.
To you. To us.
to the family we've created. I love you, he said simply, in case I forget to say it tomorrow in front of 300 witnesses. I love you too. So much it still sometimes surprises me. We stood together in the quiet kitchen, holding each other, while moonlight streamed through windows and our children slept peacefully upstairs. Tomorrow would bring a ceremony and celebration and official bonds. But tonight was just us. Just this moment of peace and gratitude and love that had been built through patience and choice and proving that broken things could heal into something stronger than they'd been before. Ready for tomorrow?
Kieran asked.
I thought about everything we'd survived to get here. Everything we'd built. Everything we'd become. More than ready. Let's make it official. Chapter 14, Forever Begins. Summer solstice dawned clear and golden, the sun rising over the northern kingdom like a benediction. I woke to find all 5 children piled into my bed. Our bed, really, since Kieran had been sleeping here for months, having apparently decided this was too important a morning to spend in their own rooms. You're getting bonded today, Eloan announced unnecessarily, bouncing with excitement that shook the entire mattress. I'm aware, I said, laughing. It has been 3 months. Are you nervous? Tobias asked, his small face serious. Not even a little bit. Good. Because Dad's been nervous enough for both of you. Caspian grinned. He burned toast 3 times this morning. He did not. He did, Linnea confirmed. And Talia had to take over breakfast. I found Kieran in the kitchen, indeed looking slightly frazzled, while Talia calmly managed pancake production. Burning toast? Asked, sliding my arms around his waist from behind. I was distracted thinking about vows. Don't judge me. I'm not judging. I think it's sweet. It's pathetic. I'm the Alpha King. I should be able to handle toast and a bonding ceremony simultaneously. You're also a man in love who's about to make the biggest commitment of his life. Cut yourself some slack. He turned in my arms, pulling me close. How are you this calm? Because I know exactly what I'm doing and who I'm doing it with. There's no uncertainty here, Kieran. Just certainty that took a while to build. I love you. I know. Now, let Talia finish breakfast before you burn down the kitchen. The morning passed in a blur of preparation and barely controlled chaos. Talia whisked me away to her house, where a team of pack women descended with makeup and hair supplies and the dress they'd spent months creating. Soft ivory fabric that flowed like water, simple but elegant, with embroidery along the hem that depicted forest scenes and wolf tracks. It's perfect, I breathed, seeing myself in the mirror. Not the exhausted, defeated Omega who'd arrived with 5 desperate children, but someone who'd healed, who'd found strength, who'd learned that surviving could transform into thriving if you had the right support. You're perfect, Fiona corrected, adjusting a flower crown woven with summer blooms. Inside and out. That man is lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have him. You're both lucky. That's how it should be. The children arrived in their formal clothes, Eloan in a green dress that made her look suddenly older, the twins in matching outfits they'd insisted on, Tobias in a little suit he kept tugging at, and Aurelia in a white dress with so many ruffles she looked like a tiny cloud. Mama, you look like a princess, Caspian exclaimed. A wolf princess, Linnea added. Because regular princesses are boring. I'll take the wolf princess. Can we go see Dad now? Eloan asked. He made us promise to check that you hadn't changed your mind. I haven't changed my mind. Not even close. Good. Because he's been really nervous, and it's kind of funny. The bonding ceremony was held in the same clearing where Kieran had first told me he loved me, under the ancient oak that had witnessed countless pack bonds over centuries. The entire northern kingdom had gathered, 300 wolves and their families, all dressed in their finest, all here to celebrate a partnership that represented what the pack stood for.
Choice.
Healing. Building a family from broken pieces. I walked down the aisle, really just a path through seated pack members, with my 5 children surrounding me. Not given away like property, but choosing to walk forward into this new chapter together. Kieran stood at the end, next to the heart tree, wearing dark formal attire that made him look every inch the alpha king. But his eyes were all for us, shining with emotion he didn't bother hiding. When we reached him, the children broke formation and hugged him immediately, nearly knocking him over with enthusiasm. "Careful," he laughed, steadying himself. "I need to get through this ceremony without falling over." "We're excited," Tobias explained. "I can see that." Elder Gareth stepped forward to officiate, his silver beard braided with traditional pack beads. "We gather today to witness the bonding of Kieran Ashford and Vesper Thorne," he began, his voice carrying across the clearing. "Not a traditional mate bond forged by biology and fate, but a chosen bond built on trust, respect, and the daily decision to stand together." He gestured to both of us. "In the Northern Kingdom, we honor all forms of commitment. We recognize that love takes many shapes, and bonds can be created through choice as powerfully as through supernatural destiny." Kieran took my hands, his grip warm and steady. "I was supposed to memorize vows," he said, "but looking at you now, all the practiced words seem inadequate. So I'll just say this." He took a breath. "Vesper, you came into my life when I convinced myself that duty was enough. That building a kingdom and keeping wolves safe was sufficient purpose. You showed me I was wrong." His voice roughened with emotion. "You showed me that purpose is found in small moments, bedtime stories and dried tears, and watching children discover joy. That strength isn't always about power, but about surviving impossible circumstances and still choosing kindness. You and your children have given me more than I ever gave you. You've given me a family, a home, a reason to stop living in the past and start building a future." He squeezed my hands. "I promise to stand beside you, not above you. To support without controlling. To love without demanding. To be the partner and father you and the children deserve, every single day, for as long as I live." There wasn't a dry eye in the clearing, including mine. "I didn't prepare vows either," I admitted, "because I'm not good with speeches. But Kieran, you saved my life. Not dramatically in one moment, but slowly, patiently, by proving that safety could exist. That alphas could be gentle. That trust could be rebuilt after betrayal. You never made me feel less for being Omega, for being damaged, for coming with 5 children and more baggage than most wolves accumulate in a lifetime. You just saw us, claimed us, loved us exactly as we were." I blinked back tears. "I promise to trust you, even when fear tells me not to. To let you carry some of the weight instead of insisting I can do everything alone. To build this life with you, not just accept the one you're offering. I promise to love you, not because you saved me, but because of who you are. Patient and fierce and absolutely certain that broken things deserve to be cherished." Gareth stepped forward with a length of silver cord, traditional pack bonding material. "Join hands," he instructed. Kieran and I faced each other, palms pressed together, while Gareth wrapped the cord around our joined hands in an intricate pattern. "This cord represents the bond you choose today," he said. "Not forced by supernatural imperative, but created by conscious decision. Each loop is a promise. Each knot is a commitment. When you leave this clearing, you leave as bonded partners, recognized by pack and law." He tied the final knot. "Do you, Kieran Ashford, Alpha King of the Northern Kingdom, accept this bond and all it represents?" "I do, completely and without reservation." "Do you, Vesper Thorne, Omega of the Northern Kingdom, accept this bond and all it represents?" "I do, gladly and with my whole heart." "Then by the authority vested in me by pack law and tradition, I declare you bonded partners. What you have chosen, let no wolf separate." The pack erupted in cheers and howls. The children launched themselves at us again, and suddenly we were surrounded by family, by blood, and by choice. Kieran pulled me into a kiss that was both gentle and claiming, and I felt something settle deep in my chest. Not a mate bond. I still wasn't ready for that supernatural connection. But something just as powerful. A chosen tie. A commitment that came from love rather than biology. "Mrs. Ashford," he murmured against my lips. I'm keeping Thorne, I said. Vesper Thorne Ashford if we need to be official. Perfect. Like you. The celebration that followed was everything pack celebrations should be, food and music and laughter that echoed through the forest. Children ran wild under the watchful eyes of designated guardians. Adults danced and drank and told stories that grew more elaborate with each retelling. My new family, because that's what they were now, officially, were surrounded by well-wishers and congratulations. You did good, Malachi told Kieran, clapping him on the shoulder. Though we all knew you were gone for her months ago. Was that obvious? You moved her into the nicest house in the territory and spent every free moment with her children. Yes, you were obvious. Talia pulled me into a fierce hug. I'm so happy for you. For all of you. This is what you deserve. All the happiness, all the love, all the security. Thank you for believing it was possible before I did. That's what friends do. The mothers group had formed a receiving line of sorts, each woman offering congratulations and sharing their joy. Some cried. All hugged me, like I was precious. You gave us hope, one woman said, the rejected Omega who'd arrived just last month, still raw from her own abandonment. Seeing you build this, survive and thrive, it makes us believe we can too. You can. I promise you can. As evening fell and lanterns were lit, Kieran found me watching our children dance with their friends, faces flushed with joy and sugar. Happy, he asked, sliding an arm around my waist. Deliriously. Is this real? Am I allowed to have this? It's real. And you're not just allowed, you've earned it. Every moment of happiness, every bit of security, every ounce of love. You've earned all of it by refusing to give up when everything said you should. We earned it. Together. Together, he agreed. The music shifted to something slower, and he pulled me into a dance, right there in the middle of the celebration with our pack watching and our children giggling and the summer night wrapping around us like a blessing. I used to have nightmares, I admitted quietly. That I'd wake up and this would all be gone. That I'd be back in that studio apartment with 5 hungry children and an eviction notice and no hope. And now I have different dreams. About tomorrow, and next week, and next year. About watching the children grow up safe. About building programs to help other struggling wolves. About growing old with you, and never taking a single day for granted. I like those dreams. Let's make them real. We already are. Later, after the celebration had wound down and we'd finally gotten the children to sleep, a process that took twice as long as usual thanks to excitement and sugar, Kieran and I stood on our porch watching stars emerge. How does it feel, he asked, being officially bonded? Like coming home after a very long journey. Like finding something I didn't know I was looking for. For me too, though I knew I was looking. Just didn't expect to find it in a rejected Omega with 5 children and more courage than any wolf I've ever met. Lucky for both of us, you looked past the surface. Lucky for both of us you gave me a chance. We stood in comfortable silence, wrapped in each other and packed bonds and the knowledge that we'd built something real. Something lasting. Something that had started with desperation and transformed into genuine love. What happens now? I asked. After the ceremony and celebration and making it official?
Now.
Kieran smiled. Now we live. We raise our children. We keep building the kingdom and changing laws and helping wolves who need it. We have breakfast together and argue about bedtime and make memories that our grandchildren will tell their children. That sounds perfect. It does, doesn't it? Through the window, I could see into the children's room. All 5 of them piled together in Alohan's bed, unwilling to be separated even in sleep. My 5 miracles who'd survived rejection and poverty and instability to find this safety, family, home. They're going to be okay, Kieran said, following my gaze. More than okay. They're going to thrive. Because of you. Because you gave us a chance when no one else would. Because of you, he corrected. You fought for them every single day. I just made sure you didn't have to fight alone anymore.
Still, thank you.
For everything. for seeing us, for saving us, for loving us exactly as we are. He turned me to face him, amber eyes reflecting starlight and something deeper. You saved me too, Vesper. Gave me purpose beyond duty. Showed me that healing from loss means building new love, not avoiding it. You and those children, you're not my redemption. You're my future. And I'm grateful every day that you chose me. Always. I'll always choose you. We kissed under the stars, bonded partners and chosen mates, and a family built from broken pieces that had somehow become more beautiful for having been shattered and reformed. Behind us, the house, our home, held sleeping children who would wake up tomorrow in a world where they were safe and loved and claimed by an entire pack. Where rejected Omega didn't mean disposable. Where being a single mother wasn't a mark of shame. Where 5 children born from rejection could grow up surrounded by the kind of love that healed instead of hurt. This was our story. Not perfect because real things never are, but ours. Built on choice and trust and the daily decision to show up for each other. And as the summer solstice moon rose over the northern kingdom, illuminating forests and packlands and the life we'd created from impossible circumstances, I finally let myself believe in forever. Not because fairy tales promised happy endings, but because we'd built one ourselves. One day, one choice, one moment of courage at a time. Together. Always together. 2 years later, the law passed on a cool autumn day that felt like vindication wrapped in justice. The Council of Alphas has voted, the announcement read, to implement mandatory support requirements for all rejection cases involving pregnant mates or minor children. Failure to provide financial and medical support will result in immediate loss of alpha status and potential exile from pack territories. Kieran read it aloud at dinner, his voice thick with emotion. It worked. After 2 years of fighting, it actually worked. You did it, I said, squeezing his hand. You changed pack law. We did it. Your testimony, the cases we documented, the wolves we helped, all of it built the evidence that forced the council to act. Eloan, now 10 and already showing signs of future leadership, raised her juice glass. To Dad and Mama, for making sure no one else has to go through what we did. To make things better, the other children chorused. That night, after the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Kieran and I sat in our favorite spot on the porch, the swing we'd added last spring, worn smooth from nightly use. Celine would be proud, I said quietly. I hope so. I like to think she's watching, seeing that her loss meant something, that other wolves won't suffer what she did. How many families has the Northern Kingdom taken in now? Since we arrived? 47. Rejected mates, abandoned parents, wolves fleeing abuse. All of them find sanctuary here. All of them are building new lives. Because you made it possible. Because we made it possible, he corrected. Your daycare program, the support groups, the training for damaged wolves, that's what makes them stay. What transforms sanctuary into home. I leaned into him, fitting perfectly under his arm after 2 years of practice. Do you ever miss it? The time before us? When was your life simpler? Not even for a second. Simple isn't always better. This life, chaotic and loud and full of children who track mud everywhere, this is everything I never knew I needed. As if on cue, Tobias appeared in the doorway, dragging his blanket. I had a bad dream. Can I stay with you? Of course. Kieran scooped him up, and our 4-year-old, who still occasionally retreated into selective silence when stressed, curled against his chest with a trust that came from 2 years of consistent safety. Better? Kieran asked softly.
Better.
You're here. Always. I'm always here. I watched them together. This alpha king and the boy who'd barely spoken when we arrived, now secure enough to seek comfort without shame. Watched and felt my heart expand with gratitude for the life we'd built. Not perfect. Some days were still hard. My wolf would never fully heal. The children carried scars from their early years. We all had moments where old fears resurfaced. But we had each other. We had a pack. We had home. And that, it turned out, was everything. The moon rose over the northern kingdom, silver and bright. Inside, for more children slept peacefully. In my arms, the Alpha King held a small boy with nightmares. And I thought about that desperate Omega facing eviction with 5 hungry children, no hope, and an impossible future. She'd survived. More than survived, she'd thrived. We'd all thrived. And somewhere, in whatever comes after, I hoped Celine could see what her loss had built.
Could see that she mattered.
That her story changed things. That her brother had honored her memory by making sure no wolf would die the way she had. Thank you, I whispered to the night, to Kieran, to whatever force had brought us together. For what? Kieran asked sleepily. For everything. For this life. For proving that broken things can heal. For being exactly who we needed when we needed it most. Thank you for letting me be that. For trusting me with your heart and your children. For choosing me every day even when fear said not to. Always. Forever. Forever, he agreed. And as the northern kingdom settled into peaceful sleep, as our family breathed softly in their dreams, as pack bonds hummed beneath our skin, I finally, completely believed in happy endings. Not because someone handed them to us, but because we'd built one ourselves. Together. The end. Thank you, Moonlit Souls, for joining us on Vesper and Kieran's journey from rejection to redemption, from survival to thriving, from broken to whole. This is Wolf Heart Tales, reminding you that even the darkest nights end, and sometimes the Alpha King shows up exactly when you need him most. Until next time, may your pack bonds be strong and your hearts be brave. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe for more epic stories.